How to bowl fast in cricket, demonstrated by elite players and coaches I've filmed with.
If we have a wander up here, and the principle of this really is you can take anybody and put them in these key positions. It doesn't mean they're going to bowl fast, but what it means is they're going to be the best version of themselves. So let me be clear. I'm not saying you can take an old lady off the street who's 90 years old and turn her into a great fast bowler. I'm not saying that at all. But what you could do is you could make her the best version of her. And I'm in the job of trying to create the best version of cricketers. So if we come all the way up here, sort of bring you down, we'll come up into the crease area here. I'm going to talk about the 4 tent peg positions. The first one is back foot impact. So if I'm a sideways bowler, I'm bowling this way, but my back foot is going to land pointing sideways. So that's the first thing, and this is what coaches misunderstand as sideways. Sideways is where the back foot points. So if my back foot lands this way, I'm a sideways bowler. It means my chest is going to face sideways. It means my hips and shoulders are going to face sideways because that's how I'm landing. But I'm bowling this way. Okay, the 2 principles for making this position work are, I'm going to have my hand somewhere in my vision, and I'm going to make sure that my elbow and my knee line up together like there's a piece of string between them. So tent peg 1, back foot impact position for a sideways bowler would be this. Really simple. This is the position here. And all I'm doing, I'm lifting my elbow and my knee up from my core. I'm not leaning back to do it, so I don't want to create issues here. I'm not twisting and opening this way, because this would be a mixed action. And we don't want bowlers to mix in the bowling action. So, tent peg 1 for sideways bowlers here. Elbow and knee together. Effectively eat an apple, old school stuff. Looking over the crook of my arm down the pitch. Easy position. Next one is semi-midway or semi-side on. This foot is now pointing towards a square leg umpire, which means the rest of me is also going to point towards the square leg umpire. And the same principle applies. We're going to eat an apple, we're going to pick the elbow and knee up together, and I'm going to start to bowl like this, if in this position. And as I'm looking forward, I'm looking slightly inside my arm rather than over the side of it, because I'm semi-midway. I'm not either front on or side on. I'm semi. But the position's identical. Elbow and knee lined up together, eat an apple. Third one, front on. It's front on bowler, my laces and foot are pointing straight down the pitch, so the rest of me will. I'm going to eat an apple again, and I'm going to lift my knee and elbow up together here. Now I'm looking way inside, because I'm chest on. So those 3 positions, the only things that differ in the 4 tent pegs: sideways, semi-sideways or semi-midway, and front on. That's the position for tent peg 1. The rest of this is now identical. So from here, we're going to go to tent peg 2. Tent peg 2 is front foot impact. I'm going to do this from front on, then I'm going to reverse it round, and I'm going to explain why in a second. So if I'm front on, what I'm going to do on the bottom of my action, I'm going to take my hands away, is I'm going to extend my foot and land with a straight front leg. And when I do that, I'm going to create a little bend in the back here. It's called a drop step. So what I've got is I've got a drop step and a block at the front. So it's a front foot block and drop. I'm giving you the right terminology. Drop step, up on my toe drop, front foot block. Now, why I want to keep this leg straight and not bend is if I bend my front leg, I'm going to absorb my energy. I don't want to do that. I want to transfer my energy into the top of my body. And I do it by creating a blocking motion. A bit like hitting a brick wall and my top's going to get thrown forward. So I'm trying to create a base that's strong, stable, drop, block. Again, drop, block. Whilst that's happening, the top of my body, I'm going to isolate that, now goes to grab the batsman's collar here and grab the sight screen from behind here. So put those 2 together. This is the position for tent peg 2. And what you'll notice is my feet are lined up as if I was on skis. Lots of coaches make the mistake of having tightrope feet, which is like this, and that's off balance. But they're still straight, so they'll think, oh, the feet are straight, but they're on a tightrope. We want them on skis, because they need to be underneath each hip.
Is that a lot to do with momentum going forward?
It's to do with not crossing your feet over. If you cross your feet over, you start to step across and tip away, which is called lateral flexion. We don't want to do that. We want to keep everything aligned to target as we're built as human beings. Feet under knees under hip, feet under knees under hip. Keep it simple. So front on bowler will drop into the block. Tent peg 1, 2. Simple. If I'm a semi-bowler, I've got to turn these laces to land. That movement is called pre-turn. I'm going to turn those laces before the front foot impacts. So a semi-bowler, just base only, would do this. They turn their foot just before the front foot impacts. And a sideways bowler would be here, and they would turn more. Why that's important is we're trying to engage ankle, knee and hip rotation. We're trying to rotate our hips towards the batsman. And that twisting motion is called torque, and that creates speed. So it helps us to create a rotation of the hips into the block. If you're a sideways bowler, you can't just bend your knee. You remember Steve Finn? He changed, I think, the laws because he kept hitting the stumps with his knee. And if you look at his bowling action, he tends to bowl like that. I'm exaggerating. When actually, that would be the answer. So pre-turn, drop step, front foot block. Again, the top half of the body is the same for all three. Grab the batsman's collar, grab the sight screen from behind. As a sideways bowler, that's the position I'm looking for. And you'll notice that I'm balanced over the top of my knee, under my hip, under my shoulder. It's all aligned. What I'm not doing is this. I'm not pushing my body forward before I bowl. Because I want the bottom half of my action to do this before I use the top. Front on. I'm not using my top. I'm getting my base to be active first. This is where lots of bowlers and coaches misunderstand how the body works. It works from the floor upwards, like a rocket taking off. We need to build from the floor, then we can bring the top in second. Okay, so tent peg 1 to 2. I was a sideways bowler myself, so let's do it sideways. I'm in position, ready to go. From this position, my front arm, which is here, grabbing the batsman's collar, is now going to pull in. And if I do it towards the camera, if I just come out of context for a second, I'm going to pull the batsman in here. And I don't want to pull him in like that. I don't want to start pulling my arm in. I want to pull the batsman in towards me here. As I pull in, I'm going to start to move this hip forward as well. So this front arm and back hip work together. Whilst I'm doing that, my bowling hand is going to come over and release the ball like a high five. And that is tent peg 3 or ball release. So if I do this from the side again, so you can see, tent peg 1, into 2, into 3. There's my release. My knees are level, my front leg is straight, I pull the elbow in, I'm giving the batsman a high five. You'll notice that I'm actually quite low.
Yeah, I was about to say that because there's a lot said in the traditional MCC coaching manual as such that...
Stand up.
Stand up tall.
Bowl tall. If you want to stand up and bowl tall, you'll bowl medium pace. If you think of, let's take another sport, you think of a rugby scrum. When the rugby guys are standing up like that, the rugby scrum, they go down low, they lock and engage, they push against each other. Because that low position is a driving power position. You don't see rugby scrums pushing like this. That's not powerful. So if you want to stand up and bowl tall as a fast bowler, it's not powerful. It'll be like doing this. Confetti, gale force wind. It'll just come straight back at you. The secret of bowling fast is to get into a low-driven position with the hips back, chest forward, and extension. That gives you a big arm pull and release here. This distance is called range. We're increasing the range of motion, like an elastic band stretching. The human body is full of muscles that stretch and contract. When we stretch and contract them quickly, we're like an elastic band. But you have to do that in certain sequence. So floor first, top second. And you start, and I'll just do the base, but I'll bring the top in. You start to get this kind of ripple effect. As you hit, you feel like you're being pushed forward. You're not throwing yourself forward. You're not getting ahead of the action. You're letting your hips go, bang, and then your top gets, bang, pushed in the back. So we're into tent peg 3. So we did it from sideways, into here, into release, semi here, into release, front on is just drop into the block, release. Those are the positions that we get into. So 10 peg 2 and 3 are identical for all of us, except for the pre-turn depending on which way you are. 10 peg 4, hard to do this statically, but 10 peg 4 is a release. Excuse me, it's a follow through. What we're going to do with the bowling hand is we're going to try and come down and go past our shin with the bowling hand here. As we do that, we're going to imagine in front of us there's a lever. And as we pull the lever, it activates this knee, because we're going to drive the knee out. And when we complete the action, this bowling hand is going to the top and touch the sky. So in this position here, I'm going to come towards the camera. And then we finish in a straight line. You'll notice that I finished in my own railway track. What I didn't do is I didn't step across the stumps, or I didn't start peeling away. I did everything to target. So those are the 4 tent pegs, and what links them together is another acronym called RUSHA, which stands for range, speed, sequence, separation, and alignment. Okay? Range is the distance you move the cricket ball. Speed is how fast you're moving, not the ball. How fast can you go between these lines? If you're kind of going in slow motion, the ball's not going to come out quickly. If you're going through this crease quickly like that, the ball's got a chance of coming out fast. Sequence. Are you working from the floor upwards? Or are you just bowling with your shoulders and arms? You'll see bowlers when they warm up in a game, they'll just do this. They're never using the bottom half. We don't even warm up properly in games sometimes. Club cricket's great. Club cricket's great. You see a club bowler come and go, whoa, whoa. All he's doing is swinging his arms around. It's like the rest of his body doesn't exist. And this is the problem we have as fast bowlers. We've been ingrained to believe you can't teach any of this, and it all comes from how fast your arm comes over. Not so much. It's not just that. Ultimately it is, but that's not where the speed comes from. The other thing is separation, where the hips come forward and the shoulder gets delayed. That movement between the hips being pushed forward and the shoulder being delayed, that is called shoulder-hip separation. What we don't want is we don't want them to move together like this. We want them to move away from each other to create the stretch. And one of the biggest indicators of speed is shoulder and hip separation. I always identify a fast bowler when I look at them to see whether they have shoulder-hip sep. Have they got the hips forward and the shoulder back delayed? That looks quite slingy. Hey, that's a great way to bowl. Arm pull, delayed arm, hips forward. That's a great position to be in. It's almost like a javelin throw. We're not throwing a javelin, of course, but it's that kind of shape. So we've got a brace front leg, drop step, hips here, shoulder back, that creates separation. That's one of the 3 ways of creating speed, shoulder-hip separation. Second way of creating speed, if I was just standing here and did this, and let a ball go, it would go down the other end. So how fast I rotate my shoulders, how fast I bring my arm over, is another way of creating speed. If I can bring that in whilst I'm doing this, we create 2 of the things that accelerate a cricket ball. The third way to increase speed is to increase your ground speed and block it. Now, when I explain this, we have to decelerate the base to accelerate the top. What that means is, as we come in, we hit the block and the top gets catapulted forward. We don't want to be ahead of our legs. If we get ahead of our hips or our legs, the speed isn't going to be there. The ground speed is gone. The ground speed has to come first, the block has to come first, then the top gets catapulted forward. So that big stretch at the top and contraction. It's a sequence of muscle stretch and contraction. Everybody that's watching this in the human body is made up of muscles that stretch and contract. Muscles can only pull, they can't push. The only part of the body that can push is the tongue. The rest of you, and you don't bowl with your tongue, the rest of your body just stretches and you pull the cricket ball. You need to think of pulling the cricket ball towards the batsman, and we're working in straight lines. So we have RUSHA, range, speed, sequence, separation, alignment. On one side we have the 4 tent pegs, which is the structure on the other. The 4 tent pegs doesn't make you bowl fast, it's the framework which you hang your own flesh on. Does it mean if you don't have the 4 tent pegs you can't bowl fast? Not at all. Shoaib Akhtar, great example. Shoaib Akhtar bent his front leg. Doesn't make him a bad man, and he also has bowled the fastest ball ever recorded. Could he bowl quicker if he kept his legs straight? Probably, but that would have had to have happened a long time ago. Dale Steyn bends his front leg, still bowls 150 clicks. Very quick. Other bowlers keep their leg completely straight. Jofra Archer, great bottom half front leg. If you look at the bottom half of Jofra Archer's action, it's very similar to Brett Lee. Brett Lee probably had the best technical fast bowling action of all time. And he would be the closest to this model that I'm talking about. I haven't based this on Brett Lee's action. He's the one that fits this the closest. So are we trying to clone people? Not at all. I wish I could clone everybody watching this into Brett Lee or Dale Steyn. I wish I could clone you all. But the truth is we can't clone anybody. However, humans are mimickers. We copy stuff. How often do you hear of a lad from the subcontinent who's watched Sachin Tendulkar bat on video, and then he goes out and copies him? You say, oh, my inspiration was Brian Lara, or my inspiration was this person. We watch and copy. That's what we do as humans. But we're process-based learners. We have to learn by doing things in sequence. But you have to know from the start what that sequence is and how it applies. So, in general terms, I hope I haven't complicated it, but in general terms, we've got those 4 key positions that we're looking for in the action, and how we link them together is your own way of doing it. If you look at someone like Jasprit Bumrah, who has quite an unusual looking bowling action for India, or Kagiso Rabada, or anyone like that who appears very different, if you look at their 4 tent pegs, they're pretty much there. They do them in their style. That's why I said at the beginning, we have structure, which is this, and we have style, which is what it looks like when they do it. The style of Rabada is very different to Dale Steyn, very different to Mark Wood, very different to Jofra Archer, very different to Jimmy Anderson, Stuart Broad. We took a silhouette of Jimmy Anderson bowling, you go, oh, that's Jimmy Anderson. But he has the 4 tent pegs. Some of them are slightly, not his one in particular, but some bowlers have slightly out of sequence, but they are there. And how you'd improve that is to improve their sequencing, because it's one of the S's of Russia. Russia, 4 tent pegs together, you've got the best version of a bowler. And that's what we're doing here at the National Fast Bowling Academy. We're taking these young kids, giving them great information at the age of 12, 13, 15, 16, blowing their heads off for the first time because they're being told to stand up and bowl tall, and all that advice, which doesn't work. But that's what people are coaching. And the challenge we have is, let's look at how we do it. What amazed me, this is a final comment on this whole thing, what amazed me was that if you take 100 metres, Jesse Owens, I think in 1936, he won the Berlin Games. His speed was, I think, 10.36 for the 100. If he ran today against Usain Bolt, he wouldn't even qualify for the final with that speed. In fact, I don't think he would be in the women's final with that speed. That's how big the difference is. In 1930-something Bodyline series, Harold Larwood was reportedly bowling at 95 miles an hour. Just think about that for a second. That's 90 years ago. So here we are, 90 years on from someone bowling 90 miles an hour. We still get excited when somebody bowls 90 miles an hour. This is the only sport, and let me be more specific, fast bowling is the only discipline where we haven't improved in speed. Now, that can't be right, because this is human movement. Every other thing, every other sport that has a ballistic rotational movement, ballistic means speed, rotational is this, every other sport that has that has improved dramatically, except fast bowling. So you'd have to question it. So that's where we are, that's what we're doing. The proof of the pudding, we have a 13-year-old lad here, just 13, bowling 73 miles an hour. We have a 13-year-old girl bowling 65. That's fast for that age. And there'll be more. You know, we'll produce them. We'll find them. I'd like to work with all the county boards, all the national boards, and help on this side. You know, what we're doing, I think, has great interest. Whether people want to do it or not, I don't know. But that's what we're doing here, and so far, so good.
Ian, brilliant. Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
So what we thought we'd do is talk about some of the common mistakes that bowlers make and how to rectify them. And as we know with the 4 tent pegs, the 4 positions of the bowling action, back foot impact, front foot impact, ball release and follow through. We're going to start off with tent peg 1, which is landing in the crease, and some of the common problems that people have. Cath's just going to do a quick demo of this.
So as a fast bowler, you don't want to, right arm fast bowler, load up underneath this side of your body. What this does is as you pull back to bowl, your hand will go towards the umpire. And as fast bowlers, we want to create a stretch in the middle of our action, like a catapult, bang, like that. So our arm wants to go back straight, and this creates a nice stretch in our pecs here, and that's going to help you bowl super fast. If your hand is underneath your armpit here, as you go to bowl, it comes out towards the umpire. It's not going to create that same stretch, so you won't bowl as quickly. From this position also, if I now go towards my upswing into my release point, I'm going to have lateral flexion, which in other words means I'm going to fall off my bowling action, and that's going to cause problems for my back as well. So as a fast bowler, you want to make sure your bowling hand is underneath your bowling shoulder when you load up, and then that will create a big stretch at the back, which will allow you to pull through onto release point. And as you can see, I'm perfectly lined up.
So aligned with that position, the incorrect position with the hand under the armpit, we've also then got where the elbow and knee don't line up with each other in tent peg 1, and normally these two are related. So what you'll find is someone misaligns at the top, there's a chance they're misaligned at the bottom as well, and that's called a mixed action. So again, we're going to just get Cath to do that for us and show us exactly how that works.
So we have 3 different bowling positions, typically. Sometimes people are between. So we have sideways, semi-midway and front on. And some bowlers do land past, but as Ian was saying, we want to make sure whatever type of bowler you are, you're aligned correctly in back foot impact, which is tent peg 1. Some bowlers, and this is a common thing to happen, if I'm a sideways bowler, my hips and shoulders should be facing this way, my knee and elbow should come together like this. Mixed bowling action is when this knee and elbow don't line up together. And what happens is there's a gap here. And this causes twisting of your back. And this is where some back injuries can come from. So if you're bowling and you have this position in your bowling action, your knee and elbow aren't lined up, the quick fix is not to change your back foot position. Some players do this, and that's just crazy. You don't want to dig up the foundations of your house. You want to keep those in place. So this is important to stay the same. Whatever back foot position you have, work with it. It's what you are. It's your style. That's how you bowl. So you want to make sure that your knee and elbow just line up together like this.
Another big thing that bowlers do when they jump from their run up, they jump into their action, is when they land too hard, too heavy, too stiff on the back foot. And it might be that they've heard coaches talk about, you know, standing up and bowling tall and nice and strong on the back leg. That isn't actually the case, because the back leg is designed to bend. We've got the knee, which is a hinge joint, and it bends, and we want that to bend. Some people confuse that with collapsing. It's not collapsing, but it's what's called a soft step. So if you run into bowl and land hard and heavy, even maybe heel first, where your heel hits the ground, that is going to be what's known as a decelerator. But you don't want to decelerate on your back foot impact. You want to decelerate on your front foot impact, which is tent peg 2. So this tent peg, the landing of the tent peg should be nice and soft, because we want to continue the momentum through into the front leg. So we encourage the bowlers to land on the front half of their foot, or the ball of their foot, without the heel impacting too hard. You can land with a flat foot, but we don't want to stop at this point. We don't want to hit the ground hard so that we stop the base and basically end up with our energy not going forwards at all. We want to continue that soft, smooth movement into the front foot block. So when we move from the back foot landing, we then go into front foot impact, which is tent peg 2. This is halfway through your bowling action. And what we're trying to create, as any coach will tell you, is a stable base. But there's a way of creating that stable base. And the way of creating that stable base is to try and keep your front leg straight if possible. Technically, it doesn't have to be dead straight. You can have a slight bend in it, but we want to hold the non-bowling side of your body. So think about when your front foot lands, which is your left foot if you're a right-arm bowler, your right foot if you're a left-arm bowler. Think of that as the base of a door frame, and the door frame is going to hold in place, and you're going to shut the door against it. So you want that door frame to be strong, and that starts from the floor upwards. We always focus on how the front foot and the front leg land, and ideally we want that front leg to be straight if possible. So we're just going to talk a little bit about what that looks like if you don't do it, and how to correct it if you can.
As Ian said, one of the common errors is bending your front leg as a fast bowler. What this does is it absorbs your energy. So if you think about it, if you're jumping and you jump with bent legs, that absorbs the energy. If you keep your legs straight, the energy transfers. And even just in that small move, you can see my head shakes, because the energy travels up my body. It's the same principle for fast bowling. We want to make sure that our front leg is straight so we can transfer the energy from the bottom half of our action to the top half. So it creates this like slamming against a brick wall with your base, and your top half comes over the top of it. And that will make you bowl so much faster. So one of the errors that people make into tent peg 2 is bending this front leg here. And that's absorbing all your energy, and you're not going to bowl as fast as you could. So the correction would be to keep that locked out and straight. Then you can drive your action against it. As Ian said, shutting the door frame. That feeling, this is a strong position to be in as a fast bowler.
So there's one other thing I wanted to just add in about a straight front leg. People mistakenly say you keep your front leg because you want to bowl taller. That isn't the case. The leg is angled back ideally at a 45-degree angle. If you were going to put it straight and dead upright, I'd agree, but from a fast bowling point of view, we want to bowl against the front leg, not over it. Spinners bowl over their front leg. Fast bowlers bowl against their front leg. As Cath said in her explanation, you bowl against it, and that means you transfer the energy into the top. We want to get that angle back 45 degrees if possible, so the top can go against it. It makes a V shape, which is called a V-shaped power blast, and that's what we want to get in a bowling action. So another big problem people have when they land their front foot is actually where the front foot points. So wherever your feet point is kind of where your energy is going. And there are some bowlers who have a front foot splay, which it rotates out. You can have all sorts of issues with ankles, knees, joints, etc. The key to that is making sure that lines up properly. And there's a way of doing that, and it's just literally practicing it. So we're just going to get Cath to show what that looks like when it's done well, but also what happens when it sometimes goes wrong.
A common error for fast bowling, as Ian said, is where your front foot points. Our feet are like the tyres of our car. We want to point them in the direction that we're going as fast bowlers because we're moving at speed through the crease. We don't want things going out of line. We want to work in straight lines. So if your front foot, we call it splayed front foot, points towards first, second slip, that's not a good position to be in. Firstly, because as I said, our feet are like the tyres of our car. We'll start to move in that direction as fast bowlers when clearly we want to bowl to target and straight. Secondly, this is not very good for your ankle. You're going to have ankle injuries, ankle problems. And from this position, it's quite unstable. So your front foot sometimes would roll in this position and it'd be very uncomfortable. So if you have this problem and you splay your front foot when you bowl, the best thing to do is to keep it locked out here and straight towards the target. So your laces are pointing straight down the pitch, and that will allow you as a fast bowler to move in straighter lines to where you want to bowl.
So with the front foot landing, we also want to make sure that when we line our base up, that we're talking about lining it up on skis, not on a tightrope, or worse than that, where the front foot shuts off, and it's called closing off or shutting off your front foot. A lot of bowlers do that. In fact, most bowlers that I see have that issue where they step across their action. What that does, it misaligns them into the leg side completely, and also worse than that, can create some issues with lower lumbar, L3, L4, L5, because all the energy is being twisted at the wrong time. So again, we'll just get Cath to demo what it looks like when it's wrong, and then potentially how to put that right.
Crossing your feet off is one of the very common things that a fast bowler does, and it can cause some serious back problems like stress fractures or just general back pain. As a fast bowler, you want to eliminate anything that could be injurious or causes harm to you. So you want to make sure that your feet don't cross over with each other, but they land in the correct place. So as a right arm bowler, if I'm crossing my feet off, which I don't want to do, that means that this left foot is going across my body here. As you can see from that position, I'm lined up in the completely wrong direction. I'm going towards fine leg, but I'm actually trying to bowl straight towards off stump. So my feet are in the wrong place here. From this position, lots of bowlers then lean because they come round themselves here with this hip, and then they lean, and that causes lateral flexion and problems in your lower back here. So we don't want that at all. We want to make sure we're lined up. So as we stand as human beings, my left foot is under my left hip, under my left shoulder, And that's where we want to land it when we're bowling in the crease. So into front foot impact, or as we call it, tent peg 2, we want to make sure our left foot is under our left hip, under our left shoulder. And I can stand here all day. I'm in a really stable position and I'm going to be okay. My back isn't going in the wrong direction. It's actually going towards the target, and I'll have less back injuries than if I cross my feet over. Another issue with crossing your feet over is where that front foot now points. As I said in a previous clip, you want to make sure that your feet are going in the direction that you're going to bowl. They're the tyres of your car. You want to go in the right direction when you're bowling fast, so all your speed and energy goes towards the target. If you cross your feet over, you can see here, my foot is now also, the laces and my toes are pointing towards fine leg, even square leg. And that is in the completely wrong direction. And that can cause ankle issues, knee problems, all sorts of issues in your bowling action. So you want to make sure that along with your foot being in this place, when you do bowl, under your left hip, under your left shoulder, as a right arm bowler, as a left arm bowler, under your right hip, under your right shoulder, and also where your foot is pointing is vital.
So tent peg 3 is a release of a cricket ball, and this is when you're moving at your fastest. It is what we call the money shot. This is where you want everything lined up to target. As we're standing as human beings, we want our hips, nose, chest, feet, everything pointing to release. But what you find is that often the bowlers, when they release a cricket ball, instead of releasing from the same side they're bowling, they release over the non-bowling side. And we see sometimes on television, the commentators, they draw a line in from the front leg and they say, oh, the bowler's releasing right above their front foot. That's not what we want. We don't release above our front foot. We release over our bowling hip, which is the other side of our body. So we're just going to show what that looks like for it to be incorrect, and then we're going to show exactly what it should be right if you're getting it correct, and you want to be the best version of you, the fastest, most accurate version possible, by releasing over the right hip instead of the wrong one.
Releasing over the wrong hip is when this happens, and this causes lateral flexion in your bowling action, and this kind of lean away in your action, which you don't want. Firstly, it's not good for your back. Secondly, it's not very good for your alignment towards your target. And alignment basically means moving in straight lines towards where you want to bowl. To be the quickest version of yourself, you want to make sure you're aligned. The quickest way to get between 2 points is a straight line. That's speed, that's accuracy. So if you're leaning away in your bowling action into release, into tent peg 3, that's going to cause a lot of problems. So this lean away is not good. We want to make sure that our bowling hand is over our bowling hip so that we are perfectly aligned to target in this position and not in this one. Another thing with making sure that your release point is correct, it allows you to create that V-shaped power blast we spoke about for speed. If you think rugby, though some of you might not watch rugby, a scrum in rugby is done from a low position because that's powerful. Same for if you're sprinting. If you're sprinting, you tag your friend, let's have a race. You don't stand really tall, you stand low because speed comes from that low position. So another thing it does is it allows you to create that V-shaped power blast for pace, and you want to have that in your bowling action. You don't want to stand up tall like this, you want to have a powerful base to bowl from, and it's a low position, not a high position.
When we get to the finish of the bowling action, what we call tent peg 4, this is a consequence of the first 3 tent pegs. I mean, you can't create tent peg 4 out of thin air, it's a consequence. And the ball has technically left your hand. So how you finish the action is indicative of how your action was in the 3 tent pegs before, if that makes sense. But the 2 common errors that we see, the first one is not completing the bowling action, not getting a full shoulder rotation in, which means you haven't taken the energy out through the back of the ball. And the second one is with the base, that's from hips to floor, stepping back in towards the stumps, or almost running down the pitch, stepping inside. That comes because you haven't driven the bowling side through correctly, up and out. So let's just explain what both of those look like and how to correct them.
Shoulder rotation is one of the ways of bowling quicker. So in the finish of our bowling action, it's really important that we make sure our shoulders are working in the way we want them to. If you think of a car wheel spinning, that rotational energy is something you can get in your bowling action straight away. So by just finishing your bowling action off properly, you can bowl a bit faster. One of the common key things that people do wrong in this position is when they get to the finish of their bowling action, they end up swimming with this arm. We call it swimming. It's like when their hand comes back over, and that's not a very powerful position. That doesn't mean you've used your shoulders correctly in shoulder rotation. So in the correct position, we'd make sure that our hand is locked out the top, like we're pointing to the sky, and this hand comes right underneath our armpit, and that creates this really nice shoulder rotation that will ensure you bowl faster. Another common key thing that people don't do correctly is they step inside after they've bowled. So when they finish their bowling action, instead of driving this knee out, up and straight towards the target, in alignment, in a powerful position, they end up stepping inside where the umpire actually is standing, and this means that your energy's just gone in the wrong direction. As we said before, run up straight, go through the crease line straight, follow through straight, which is this part. You're going to be bowling straighter and more accurately, which is what we want. So you want to make sure that this knee does not go inside. You don't step inside and across yourself when you finish your action, but instead you actually drive out straight towards target, and you'll be much more powerful with that shoulder rotation and that knee drive out, and you'll bowl a lot faster.
I think what this is showing is how important bowling technique is. Most coaches would understand that we teach, or we should be teaching, the technique of batting. Batting's always under focus, isn't it? With someone's got a poor technique, they can't bat in Test cricket or whatever it is, and we then start to look at how they do stuff. But there's a difference here between style and structure. The structure is literally how you do it. The technical part of it, that's the structure. And that's common to all of us. The style is what it looks like when you do it. So someone's style of bowling will look different to someone else's style of bowling, but they might have the technical part in place. This is why we need to focus in and drive in on the technical aspect of it. It is a complicated subject. It's an area that's full of mystery, but if you can assess and work out the positions you're in, you can help yourself to be a better bowler. At the end of the day, this is all about what you do between the white lines. The outcome at the batter's end is the outcome, but you can control the outcome by controlling what you do in the crease. And the better you are in the crease, the better fast bowler you'll be, but it's worth the journey.
So today I'm going to talk a little bit about the biomechanics of fast bowling from both a performance point of view in terms of producing fast ball speeds, but also having a little think about staying healthy from an injury point of view. So I think the first thing to realise or consider when we're looking at fast bowling is it's a series of movements, not just a singular movement. So we have a run up where the primary focus is to develop momentum by running and generating some movement in a linear direction. And then we have a jump, gather, back foot contact into front foot contact and ball release. So you have the jump, gather and the back foot contact phase where we're trying to organise our body in a position so it can then transfer all of that momentum up to the ball and generate ball speed. So in terms of the focus of these three key areas, you've got a generating momentum focus, you've got a part of the action where you're trying to maintain that while you organise everything to get ready to bowl, and then you've got the transferring momentum stage from front foot contact up to ball release to try and generate all of that momentum, convert it and use it to deliver the ball as fast as possible. Okay, so there's two ways of looking at this. We can start at that end and go run up to release, or we can start at this end and look at release backwards and work out what people do. The research has looked at the business end first, and now we're starting to work backwards. What do we already know? In 2013, there was a PhD at Loughborough University looking into what the fastest bowlers do and how they generate ball release speed, and also how to minimise front foot contact forces from an injury point of view. They found that the fastest bowlers had straight front legs, they trunk flex from front foot contact to ball release more than anybody else, they have more of this range, and at release this shoulder angle was delayed, so it wasn't up here with the head, it was back, and they also had the fastest run-ups. They used a heel strike technique where they landed with their heel first before rocking onto the front foot contact and bracing to lower their ground reaction forces. So, just walking through that, they had faster run-ups, they landed heel first, then went flat with a braced front leg, they delayed all of this upper half of the body. Once all of these forces travelled up the body to break the bottom half, the trunk flex forwards, the arm stays back, and this is probably to allow you to hold onto the ball for longer. So if it's one straight line, you have this. If it's delayed, you can come forward and still pull and release the ball to your intended target. This is fairly well known now, that faster run-ups, braced front leg, more trunk flexion, the delayed bowling arm at release are linked with increased ball speed. This research was developed on a group of bowlers and only offers on average explanations. So how do we consider individuals and work out what limits them, from a movement point of view, a strength point of view, or even a technique point of view? The next piece of research we did was by developing what we call computer simulation models. So can we create computer versions of our bowlers and then optimise them to tell us or help us understand what the optimal technique is for that individual? The results of that research were very similar to what the experimental group-based research on the elite bowlers from the England pathways found, in terms of we found that the bowlers with the fastest ball speeds, or to increase ball speed, again, you wanted to keep your legs straight, trunk flex more and delay the bowling arm. One other key attribute that's come out of the research is the role of the front arm. The faster bowlers, or when we optimised the bowlers to become faster, they all kept this front arm higher for longer before pulling it through. Probably to help them delay the top half more so that you're more balanced, but also it probably helps pull everything through a little bit quicker when you type that time into the front arm action correctly. So we're pretty confident now that in the business area from front foot contact to ball release, the right way of doing it is land with a braced front leg, which breaks your pelvis, converts all that nice run-up energy momentum you've got into rotational energy, which throws your trunk over. The more you convert, the better you convert it, the further your trunk goes, explaining why those that bowl faster have greater trunk flexion. And then the further you go, the more delayed you need your bowling arm to be in order to bowl it towards the same target. So it starts to make sense from a theoretical point of view why the modelling and the experimental research links up. Now we'd established what the best technique was from front foot contact onto ball release in terms of developing ball speed, we started to switch focus within fast bowling to another problem which was starting to arise around stress fractures. The next question was, were there parts of the technique which were linked with stress fracture occurrence? To solve this problem, we collected biomechanical data on 50 fast bowlers and then tracked them for 2 years before grouping those that had stress fractures into one group and those that didn't into another group. And we found we had 2 groups, one with 39 that had stress fractures and one with 11 that had no history of stress fractures after 2 years, and compared their 2 actions to see where there were technical differences which may be linked to stress fractures. So what did we find? Well, we found 2 key technique parameters at back foot contact which were linked with stress fracture occurrence. What were these? So at back foot contact, the bowlers which had straighter legs had less odds or chance of occurring stress fracture injuries. The bowlers that had landed, and this is at the first point of contact, so it's not when the foot's flat, it's at the point where they first touch the ground in the action. The bowlers that had the highest rate of stress fracture or chance of stress fracture occurrence landed with a bent back knee and a bent hip. We also found at back foot contact some variables that explain what the lumbar spine is doing, which were different between the 2 groups. So the bowlers that got lumbar stress fractures, not only did they have more bent knees, more bent hips, their spine was leaning towards the bowling side, so if I'm right-handed this way, but they were then rotated outwards as well, away from your bowling side. So we're in a position where we've got bent knee, bent hip, leaning slightly towards this direction, but then trying to rotate outwards as well. And if you try and get in that position, you can feel some stress in your lower part of your back. Now, the reason this position at back foot contact with a bent knee, bent hip, lean towards the stumps and rotated out is bad, because as we transition through into front foot contact, our pelvis is tilt forwards. So in the whole space, our pelvis tilts forward. And if we're trying to delay our upper half to increase those attributes for ball release speed, where we have more trunk flexion, we have 2 joints within our back that we can use. We have one at what we call the thoracicolumbar joint, which bends about the bottom of our rib cage, and we also have one which we call the lumbar-pelvic joint, which is where your lumbar meets your pelvis. So we can actually move in all 3 directions at these 2 joints. So if we're in a bad position with our pelvis and we want to try and keep our lumbar spine neutral, we can use our thoracic to go back. But you can see I'm still quite forward in my action. So what our brain does is to delay further, it uses our lumbar to put us more upright. And we create a lot more stress now in the bottom of our lumbar spine because of our pelvis position. And we've seen that this position is also related to some stress injuries in other sports. So we've done a lot there in theory of what the correct biomechanics are from both a stress fracture point of view in terms of what's bad and what's good from a performance point of view. But let's actually unpackage the whole lot, put it together and work out why we get into bad positions at back foot contact, or how we can get into good positions at back foot contact, and how that allows us to develop our action as we move forward for front foot contact and ball release. So the first thing that we need to unpackage is why or how do players get into a good back foot contact position with their knee, hip, and stay neutral with their upper body at back foot contact. Or alternatively, what causes us to get into this position where we're bent, leaning in and rotated outwards? And it all comes back to where you start your run up and how you run into back foot contact and what you do within your run up, your jump gather, before you even get to back foot contact. So some really key things that we're seeing now in S&C training is how we run. So we see lots of players are working on their efficiency within their running technique. If you have poor running technique, you end up braking with every step before pushing off with every step. So you see bowlers that land with their foot out in front of them are actually braking as they're then pushing again. So you're constantly, if you think of it in a really exaggerated way, you're going bang, brake, push, brake, you're almost stuttering in, but you don't see that because we're quite smooth as what we're doing. But if you can develop a run-up technique where you strike underneath you and you're almost on a constant wave and you're not slowing down in your run-up, that will really help you. It helps keep your pelvis in that nice position and your upper body neutral so that you're not leaning forward, going back with your pelvis and putting load through it as well. We do lots of run-ups in cricket as well as just the bowling actions. So there's probably some link between your run-up technique and what happens in your lumbar spine as well. But moving away from run-up technique, because we haven't spent lots of time looking at that, what are 2 or 3 of the key things we see going into back foot contact which causes us to get into different positions? 1 or 2 of these are very heavily linked to what we've seen in the performance thing. So for the last 10 years, it's known if you run up quicker, you bowl quicker. However, these relationships aren't linear, where the faster you run up, the quicker you're going to bowl forever and ever. We don't run up like Olympic sprinters. Why not? Well, our bodies aren't strong enough and don't have enough time to handle the bowling action at the end, and we have to give them a chance to be able to produce that action. We also develop strength as we get older, and that also has a problem within this because we develop techniques as children which can be linked with bad technique at back foot contact. So let's talk through the run up. We're running up with good technique. But if we run up too fast, at this point your brain has a decision. It'll either stutter, and we see bowlers do that, and they might then have a good technique through the crease, or another favourite is to jump high. Now if you jump high at back foot contact, you're coming down. And you generally, when we come down, what we taught to do as children, land with bent knees and hips to cushion the blow. Our brain knows that. If we jump really high, we land bent to try and cushion that blow and try and actually stop ourselves from falling forwards and putting our bottoms on the floor and looking really stupid. The next problem we see within run-ups is what happens when we're young. You see lots of bowlers when they're young, because they can't generate the run-up speed, they want to turn in almost into what we call round arm or spin bowling, fast bowling actions. So they'll come in and they'll change direction to get side on so that they can almost sling it. Because when you're young and you're a teenager or a young child, actually the quickest way to bowl is to use all of this rotational big muscles in your body to bowl. But actually as you get older and you get more strength, the optimal technique morphs more towards this straight run up, use your run up speed, block it up and over, which we see all the elite bowlers doing. So what happens when you run up and change direction? Well, when you turn in off this straight line, you jump inwards. So if you jump inwards, your brain knows that you've got to correct and push yourself back towards the target. We're not very strong in straight leg positions. Our strongest positions within all our joints are about the mid-range. So if our brain knows we've got to correct, it's going to go, I need a strong position to be in. And what happens is you come in, you turn direction, land, bent knee, bent hip again. You'll be leaning that way because you're going that way, and your brain goes, I want to go that way, so you rotate out. And we get the 4 characteristics we've just talked about being linked with stress fracture injury. So we come in, change direction, and then have to push out and push ourselves towards the target. We then have this position where, because we're pushing, we end up leaning forwards to go in that direction, help us. We end up with that pelvic position, and we even end up with that big side flexion, which we also know is linked to stress fracture. So in a nutshell, two things that really link to this back foot contact position and link to stress fractures are run up speed and jumping high, run up speed and change in direction. Okay, so let's talk about individuality and talk about why some people look different to others and why some people that don't follow all the traits still manage to have international careers that are fairly successful. So the first one let's talk about that is often discussed is the front knee and whether it has to stay braced. Now, if you have some of these parameters at back foot contact, and we've demonstrated them in very extreme examples, but you can have a little change direction or you can jump a little too high. But what happens is as you get into front foot contact, your body can still be traveling down, and our brains know that our leg and knee again is very strong in its mid-range, so we tend to land bent, so we stop falling, and that's why we have this bent front knee. So the optimal technique we tend to see comes in straighter leg, and I'm not saying bowl with a straight back leg because that's not optimal either from an injury point of view, but slightly bent is better than completely bent. And you fall through front foot contact, and if you get all of your alignment correct, you'll fall into this nice brace position because your energy and everything's still going towards the target. You don't have to stop your body falling down. When you have to correct by pushing out, you generally end up having this bent knee to try and help cushion that stop. We know when we jump, we land with bent knees to try and cushion and stop as quick as possible because we're in a really strong position, and it's no different in bowling. Your brain's trying to stop you falling down, and then it takes that as the main focus rather than going forwards through the crease. Another thing that you may find as well with bent knees is just range of motion. This position and doing that is very stressful on your hamstrings. We know that hamstrings are one of the biggest soft tissue injuries in fast bowlers, and these positions that we get into are very extreme. So you may find that our brains, instead of having this position, which is really tight, actually bend our knee to take some of that load off of your hamstring. So it may be from a physical range of motion point of view we bend our knee. Is it the most important part of fast bowling and the technique? No, you can still bowl fast with a bent knee. We can still run up and land bent and keep it straight. What we don't want to see is people that collapse all the way through, because you are then losing your energy downwards, not towards the target, and that is probably going to create much higher vertical ground reaction forces, which aren't very good for your body.
Don, we've got your son here as well to hand. Do you want to talk us through your bowling philosophies before we get into the specifics of the drills?
Okay, so I am very big on coaching the individual. So I look at the individual attributes, his disciplines, what he has, and then I try to add to that. Okay, as long as it's safe. So it's very simple as that. I try and keep it as simplify everything. Yeah. So yeah, just coaching the individual. So and then after have enough information over a long time, and we have some clarity around the athlete, then we could start looking to add things, not to take anything away from what he already has. So obviously Donovan is a young fast bowler. So some of the stuff that I've been looking at is he quick? Does he have pace? Okay, how can I encourage that? And if I walk you down here, I'll show you a little drill I'll use to encourage that without he even knowing that's what I'm doing. So this is a target here. So this target is just set up here. I just kind of created a little bit, and it's set up on maybe a good length specifically for him, where he would like to bowl. So the first target would be how often can he hit this, okay? Then the next challenge would be, we move on from that, can he hit it and let it fall over, okay? Because it's quite heavy. So that is the encouraging phase. For him to hit it, for it to fall over, he really has to try and bowl quick. So I want to encourage pace and accuracy at the same time. So that's a simple drill there. So right away there, that one didn't hit the target, but it clipped the top of off stump. Looks like a little bit of pace on it as well. So right away, he's already more focused. I will move this target, and if you notice, much smaller. So I can challenge him by put it this way, or I could challenge him by putting it this way, see if he could hit this. But as also, I want to encourage him as well to hit the top of ball. So even though there's a target there, if he does miss the target, can he still hit the stump? So there you go again. So there's another little just to try and continue to encourage him to be as accurate as he can. So right away, so second ball, he's on the money. So all I can do now is to continue challenge him. So line up this with about off stump. Okay, so let me just double check if that's lined up. That's too far up. Because I want to encourage him to hit the stumps as well. So if you notice now, it's just it's a smaller target as we go along. As you can see again, just another little target, just in that area. You know, you can put it anyhow you want. So anywhere in that area, again around challenging the stump. And all I'm going to do now is I'm going to remove this. And this little ball now is lined up. So the aim is I would just let the bowler try and bowl 6 ball just around this. If they get it anywhere close to that, that's good enough. If they can hit the stump, then the more magic. If he missed the target and hit the stump, for me it's even better, because it means he's in the right channel. So now can he bowl the same ball to a left-hander? And all I do is just move it there and just encourage him as well to bowl to a left-hander, just in case a left and a right-hander combination is batting. So again, if you notice there, you know, all I was doing is challenging the bowler. There's a few targets, there's always a challenge, there's always a competition. During that period, I might be taking some video footage as well, and then I will go away and I'll look at his action. I'll maybe look where his feet is landing. I'll look if he's finished off his action, if his hands is finishing off nicely, finishing off his action, and stuff like I'll look at is he strong in this position when he landed? Is he bowling from here with a bent leg, with a flex in his knee, or is he coming over the top nicely? And those are the things I'll look at over a period of time, and then maybe, as I said before, look to try and add some more stuff to develop that. I wouldn't be doing it now because it's a full cricket season. Maybe in the winter, then when we have a lot of time, we could look how we could develop those areas. As a young bowler, and even, you know, you're always trying to get better. And once you're stronger, that gives you a better chance. So again, you know, as I said, Donovan is only a 15-year-old, and the drills, I'm always challenging him. So I'm gonna just challenge him to bowl a few Yorkers, and the whole point of these Yorkers is just trying, if you're in a position and you have to bowl at the death and someone is going after you, you have something to go to, okay? It's not the easiest thing to execute, so I've never put any pressure on any player. So like this, if you look here now, I have all different type of target. So if I was, say, it depends on where, the type of player. So if this was an international player and we planning specific for a specific individual, you know, some people, they stand back deep in their crease. Some people move about in the crease, whether left or right-handers. So we normally look to say, okay, we're going to put these small one here where they stand, whether we're going to go straight Yorkers there, we could put 2 there, or we could go this way, or I could just put it here for a wide Yorker, or I could just put it here for a wide Yorker to the lefty there, or even to the right-hander, or maybe if someone hit someone in the heel there, we could just put it there like that. So you're looking to hit the heel, the back heel, wherever, whether right or left-hander, so it's all flexible. But for the younger players like Donovan, all I'm going to do is I want to encourage him to bowl bigger. So I'm going to give him a bigger target to hit here. And also, if you notice, he was bowling with a new white ball, so I'm going to challenge him again now and give him an older ball to try and use, okay? He might get frustrated if he doesn't get it, but it's all a part of the game. And also, I still like to encourage hitting the stumps, because if he do miss his length, he's still hitting the stump as well. For me, I mean, there's so many different ways of bowling Yorkers. If you listen to some of the best Yorker bowlers, you know, the Chris Jordan and these guys, people talk a lot about dropping their arm, you know, people with a slingy action. But for me, you have to be really careful when you listen to these things, because when you're dealing with a young player, these guys understand their body, so they could change things and go back to where they can. But with a young player who's still trying to find their way, it's very important that you just put a target and encourage them to let them find a way to hit the target instead of talking to them about what someone else do. They will find a way to hit the target. You know, everyone's different again, and we're going to leave it at that. Again, this is for more the younger players. For maybe a professional, I think so with cones, for me and cones, you have to be really careful with it, what you're doing. Especially professional players, you know, they like to visualize in their head, some players. But for a younger player, if you were working with a younger player and say he was a bit wide on the crease here and you want him to get closer, so the simpler things, you could just put some cones down in this straight line, you know. Yeah, so some little cones in the straight line there, you know. And again, this is a very, very basic stuff. And as you can see, you could go all the way where he's running up from. And just encourage him to just run straight, to just practice it running in a straight line and angle. You could do the same around the wicket. You could move on from that. There's so many stuff you could do. You could move on from that, and you could get those intervention hurdles and put them high so they could run in between. And one other one that works well, what we used to use a lot, if you have more than one bowler, you could just get some crash mat here and let them stand with a crash. I don't have one here to demonstrate that. A few crash mats, and let them just run through to kind of keep them in a straight line. And always making sure that the momentum is always going towards the target. So basic drills here. So look, I like to try and be creative. You know, so if you look here, I have the camera stand. I wouldn't encourage you to use this, but it's almost the same height as me. So if I remove the helmet here, and then I put it on here like this, like say a left-handed batter, you could always make it a bit taller, depends on how you have, and then you could just encourage your bowler to try and hit the helmet. Very, very simple. With no coaching instruction, can you hit the helmet? Okay, and that will encourage them to bowl the bouncer. This is a badminton pole, and if you look, I try and make it as repetitive as where a batter would stand, and similar again. And can your bowler run in from here? Can he run in, and can he bounce the ball and hit the top of that? All right. So little drills you could do. You know, if you're gonna do a bouncer warm-up drill, you could just get in. Say from here to bowl from here. Just get into his bowling position. Try and hit it. So that's a warm-up. Okay. So that's a warm-up, and then you bring him back. Again, you bring him back from here, from halfway now. Again, make sure I don't break your camera stand because I'm not that accurate. And then from here again. Okay, so that's one. You encourage the bouncer. You're not gonna get a full run out of me. And then can he walk through? Whether from over the wicket or on, can he just walk through again here? Okay. And the last bit, then that person, again maybe, just from a little short run up, you know, just from a little short run up, here, from here again. Okay. Woo. That's the most you're gonna get out of me. That's my first time I bowled in 6 years. Yeah, but just little drills like that, just warming up right through, and then maybe from all the way back, from the full run up, yeah, and just try and say 12 balls challenge, try and hit the helmet. You could bring in whatever you want. You could find out what motivates your player. If it's money, you could chuck a £1 coin in there, a £5 note. If it's coffee or any other type of drinks, what motivates the player is important. So you try to get them motivated to do it, but challenge them. So yeah, so I mean, if you notice here, I have a ball. At the moment, there's no shiny side on this. And what I would encourage young players to do is to make sure they look after this ball. Most of the times you see them in games, you see they're chucking the ball around. If you watch any test cricket, or you always see someone have the ball in here, okay? They doesn't let any of this side get wet, and they work on one side because they want the ball to swing, and they keep shining that side. But the key thing for me is what I see work most is, as I said, I'm going to try and go right hand this time, is getting your wrist behind the ball. Once your wrist is behind that ball, okay, you could do whatever you want with it. Once the wrist goes behind it, you know, if your shiny side is pointing there and you want to bowl a big outswinger, and you want to bowl about inswinger, you could just shape it a little way there. One thing I find work as well, you could just get your thumb under here and get that thumb under there, and that if you can control that, it will even swing a bit more. For your in-swinger, it's the same thing again. The ball is important. My rough side becomes this side. I want my wrist behind it. That's the first basic stuff. My wrist's behind the ball, and where the rough side, the heavier side, is pointing. So when that ball comes down, it's gonna obviously come down like so. If this ball gets really roughed up, and it's a sunny day like today, which is outside, and the pitch is dry, you also can try a little wobble. You know, we've seen a lot of that where the ball goes. So the wobble seam is, again, you know, you want to hold the ball just like that, like so, and you want it to be coming out just like that, just wobbling in the air. So when the ball hits when it hits, instead of it going that way, it comes back. It just hits and just stays. And those are the ones that kind of hit the splice of the bat and maybe give you a wicket on a tough day when it's nothing on the ball. Another way of looking after the ball to get it to reverse is make sure that there's a way where you could rough one side up legally. Don't start rubbing this thing on the floor, but it's the way you throw in the ball, and you make sure you keep one side shine. And obviously reverse swing is where the ball go the opposite of where you want it to go. That's the best way to describe it. So if I want to reverse this thing now, and this was my shiny side, it means the ball should be going in, but it will go the opposite way. Again, if you notice, I have 2 old ball here. There's so much things you could do with these, you know, knuckleball, you know, some people get their thumb down in it like that. Some people, when they're going through the action, they hold it back there. Some people do the split finger. Some people bowl cutter, half cutter, leg cutters, the back of the hand slow the ball. There's so many of them out there. But again, for me, and this is my philosophy in doing this, I want to see what the bowler can do first before I start encouraging these things to him. So I might just say, do you have a slow ball? Bowl it. Let me see. He might come up with something new where you've never seen before. He might bowl it like that, and it comes out like that. So before, again, you start trying to coach all of these things, make sure that you find out what the player have again.
Cricket Love Stories with me, Neel Khagram. Today we're joined by Devon Malcolm. Devon, we're in Northants. How's it going?
Very good, nice to see you. Fantastic. Yeah.
So Devon, we're going to talk about some tips in terms of the mindset side of fast bowling. What are your main philosophies and tips you can give to a youngster?
Basically, that's the basic grip. You know, myself as when I used to bowl very quickly, a lot of people say, Dev, you bowl very quickly, but I tell you this now, 80% of the wickets I took, the balls actually had to do something, either get the ball to swing or to seam. What I did, good, strong wrist position. See that? Get your wrist behind the ball when you're bowling. And again, you know all the different tools, a good run up, fast bowling, good follow through, head position and all that business. But your wrist position. As I said, when I bowl, my head appears to be going to one side, but if you could put another bowler, a side-on bowler there, our wrist position will almost be in the same position as a guy who ball a bit closer to the pitch than me. My head fall away a bit, but my wrist and my arm position was perfect. Bowling a quick ball, you even want the bowling quicker. When you run up to bowl, if you cock your wrist. If you've got a stiff wrist, that simply means you got to come down. Just cock your wrist and you'll find out that you can almost generate 3 or 4 or 5 miles an hour quicker by just running into bowl, get there to bowl, cock your wrist, stiff wrist, next you got to flick. You got to flick a lot quicker. And if you flick a lot quicker, you'll get the ball to go through at a much quicker pace, or just you don't need a hell of a lot just to deceive the batsman. You know, just a little bit quicker than the one you bowled before. By the time the batsman get there, you get him out caught behind or clean bowl him. And I said there's different ways of swinging the ball. To be honest, when I used to play and you know, probably partway through the season, I used to flick the ball from this finger, and I tell you what, I normally lose quite a large proportion of my finger by flicking the seam there. And you know, quite a few years later, towards the end part of my career, I was speaking to the great, the late Graham Dilly. We were just having a discussion. He was the coach then at Loughborough University, and I would just, because he was a fantastic swinger of the ball, and I was just asking him, how does he swing the ball? And he said, look, Dev, all I did, I normally run my finger, the index finger, down this other side of the seam. And he used to swing the ball miles. And funny enough, I told him what I did, I run this finger. So people find there are different ways of doing things. And I tried the way he said, and I still get the ball to swing. But right through my career, I normally run the ball off that middle finger there. But there are different ways. You just make sure you put the ball into your finger a little bit further, and you run your finger across the seam. And again, your seam position. You know, you want the ball to swing towards the first tip. Look, you're going to make sure the ball is slightly pointing towards, you know, imagine the ball coming there, that's the slip, that's the seam of the ball slightly point towards the slip. And you find out you'll get the ball to move away from the batsman. When you talk about bowling, in any type of bowling, whether you're bowling fast or whatever, your leading arm, your bowling arm, that's one thing. But wherever you want that ball to go, your non-bowling arm, that's your steering wheel. Your front arm got to be reach high and throw that at the target. Your front arm is your direction arm. Wherever you want the ball to go, you got to throw that front arm at the target, and this arm with your head following, this front arm will go down towards the target. And again, when you get there and you bowl, it's imperative, you know, for the follow through to save the pressure from your back. This back hip, you have to drive that through to get you to run down the pitch. It's imperative. All these different sectors have to be linked up together. As I mentioned, as a fast bowler, you run up, vital. You know, a good, strong, rhythmical run up into bowl. Certain players, you know, say way back when I used to love guys like Michael Holding bowl because he had a massive long run, very intimidating for a batsman. Anyway, watching you running from all that way. Nowadays, a lot of bowlers use a much shorter run up, a more shorter economical run up. But that run up, once you start off, it's got to build up. Once you hit that crease, by the time you hit the crease, you got to be at maximum tilt. You go through, drive that back hip through, and follow down the pitch. And I said again, that front arm, everything got to be going at the target. Again, one of the main armory of a fast bowler is the bouncer. You use that to obviously get the batsman off his stride. You know, certain batsmen get in a good position where they can leave the ball easily. Bowling the bouncer, a short pitch ball, pretty simple really is, you know. Running into bowl, you just got to drop your head a little bit, you know. If you drop your head a little bit, you know, naturally you're going to pull your arm down and the ball, you'll pitch the ball short. If you want to bowl, as I said, if you just want to bowl a Yorker, you wouldn't drop your head to bowl a Yorker, because if you drop your head, you're going to pull the ball down short. And that's, in turn, if you hit the bit hard, you know, you're going to get the ball to get through the areas, you know, at the batsman. Again, you don't want the ball too high over the batsman head. You want it in an awkward position, you know. Of course, what we'll call the you know, right across the nose or something like that, where the batsman got to get out there and play the ball. And similarly, as I said, if you want a Yorker, keep your head up, and you got to aim, you know, it's something you got to work out for yourself. So I'm running into ball a Yorker. I normally try and aim halfway up the stump of the stump, and normally the ball will end up right in the block hole. If you want a ball, and nowadays with you know, the shorter form of the game, white ball cricket, the Yorker is still a vital ball to learn to bowl, and you got to get that ball right up in the block hole there. You know, so again, if you want to bowl a Yorker, something you got to practice, but you got to keep your head up a lot longer. Not unlike you just do the opposite when you're trying to bowl a bouncer. As I said, you drop your head a little bit. The Yorker, you got to keep your head up, get that front arm thrown, and aim halfway up the stump. Or certain players, certain bowlers can aim right at the base of the stump and get it there. I generally, personally, had to aim about halfway up the stump to get it in the block hole. And as I said, you know, bowling is great when you're running in and you're getting wickets off the wickets, but at times you got to also know that the batsman will get on top certain times, and the batsman will bat for a long while without getting wickets. So fast bowling is very tough. You got to be resilient to bowl quick. The captain calling you, your bowler steady, don't get a wicket, and you got to be still going. You know, even if your captain call it the last session of the day, and you got to still running and trying to bowl quick. So you got to be mentally tough. You got to be very fit also. You know, that's a major part of fast bowling. What I would say to any cricketer, and especially bowlers, is this: once you believe you know enough, so you don't want to listen anymore, time to pack up. I mean, I played until I was almost 40, and you know, towards the last year of my career, probably that's when I was most successful, because you know what, it's a continuing learning process. You know, the game changes, you got to be continuing working, batsman on learning. So you know, listen to your coaches, youngsters who are watching this video. You got to listen to your coaches, and don't believe because you've taken 5 wickets today, you're taking 6 wickets tomorrow, whatever, you know everything. No, you know, you're as good as your last game. So there's a constant learning process.
So with this drill, momentum drill, is one of those things that really gives you some really good feedback on your run up and approach to the crease, which is where a lot of problems happen, which end up getting snowballed into bigger problems when you come to let go of the ball. So what we've got here is we've got a tape which runs round from the bottom of off stump all the way back to your run up, and this represents the ideal momentum line for you to get the biggest parts of your body going towards off stump. So that's your head, your belly button, your bum, all going towards off stump, which is ultimately where we want the ball to go. So what are we looking for in this? Ideally, we want to try and have our midline on the tape, so our feet either side, and our run up will move towards the stumps, and we want to try to keep our belly button on this midline. We don't necessarily want any crossing over, so we want nice arm pump, good presentation of the ball until we get to pre-delivery jump. Okay, so we've arrived at just before the stump, so pre-delivery takeoff. Our run-up has been nice and progressive. We've got good momentum towards the target, and what's happening now is we're preparing to bowl. So this is where a number of things can go potentially wrong if the run-up back there has been slightly off. What we're trying to do here, again, same thing, foot just on the other side of the target line. That's our pre-delivery takeoff. We're looking to jump, set, land with our foot on the line, or just to the right-hand side of the line with our back foot, and then our front foot contact comes through and lands, and we're in a nice, strong base position here, which allows us to really generate a lot of force down towards that target. Okay, so from release, we're looking to drive forwards towards off stump. Okay, our back hip has come through, and we're looking again to try and keep our follow through, our shoulder rotation. Our back hip and foot is following through on our momentum line. It's the first time really that both feet are on the same side of that momentum line, and then once you've bowled the ball, let go of the ball, you can go off wherever you need to. Okay, so left-handers. It can be a problem for right arm over bowlers in particular to bowl at a left-hander from over the wicket. So what are the differences in our momentum line? Well, all we're doing is very simply moving half a step to the left, which creates our angle back towards off stump. Then we've got our tape and we run it all the way back. So we're now on our midline. And then we just run straight the way, follow our momentum line again, down towards off stump. Okay, so once we get to the business end here, once we've approached the crease, bowling at a left-hander, we're up and we're into our back foot contact position. And then once we get through, again, we're into our front foot contact position, our good release position. The really important thing from this position, when you're bowling at a left-hander, is to make sure that you keep your right hip engaged in your action for a fraction longer. That means you'll be able to keep the ball going down towards the off stump for a lot longer, and you can actually end up with your foot, in your training drills, you end up with your foot on the right side of your momentum line. That will allow you to keep momentum going towards the off stump. What we see quite often when right arm over bowlers bowl at left-handers is they'll get up into this position and then we'll go too quickly and end up pushing the ball across. And you typically find that right arm over bowlers will bowl 2 to 3 miles an hour slower at left-handers than they will at right-handers, because they're not keeping their momentum behind the ball for that fraction of a second longer. Okay, so a couple of errors which we commonly see in the run-up. So first thing is we start here, and we can all start in a great place. But the first thing that we can kind of see is if people are crossing over our momentum line, okay? So that will cause rocking in your upper body, which in turn, once you get towards the crease, will then cause a bit more instability, because once you jump, if you're not jumping towards the target, you're going to be jumping either left or right, and then you're going to have a bit of a problem when you land, because you're going to have to readjust. Another problem could be rocking from side to side with our arms. So that again causes a bit of instability, and we're going across our midline. So again, just to reiterate what we're trying to do, we want everything to be trying to go in straight lines as much as possible. Okay, another classic error that we tend to see is bowlers will start this approach nicely, but then suddenly will start to drift off slightly and then realise, and then they have to come back in just as they get to pre-delivery takeoff. Okay, so taking our last point about having a bit of a curve in your run-up. So once you actually get to pre-delivery jump, as you've started to come back in towards the stumps, your momentum is now going towards fine leg. It's not going towards off stump. So what will happen is once you take off, you're in the air, momentum is going down towards fine leg. The issue will now be that you'll land in a good place at back foot contact, but the problem is your momentum is going down towards fine leg, and you actually want to get it back towards the stumps. So what tends to happen is our heads and our arms tend to start leaking out, because we've got to try and get the ball back onto the target, and that's when we see a lot of bowlers leaning off towards the side. A lot of momentum starts going off the side of the ball, and we start to see those inconsistencies in line and length. Okay, so if we've approached in along our momentum line and it's gone well, and then suddenly we get both feet inside the momentum line, again our momentum is going out towards or down towards fine leg. We then got to try and jump out, which your body tries to do, and then we end up on the other side. And then now we're trying to get back onto the target, which is now going to be quite difficult, because our top half will be going towards now third man, and we've got to try and end up trying to go back towards the stumps, which ultimately ends up the ball going down leg side. So we end up with this zigzag effect where we're coming in, jump out, jump in again, and then try and bowl. And this zigzag happens very, very quickly, and it's quite small, that's very exaggerated, but it has a tremendously negative effect on you being able to consistently release the ball from this position with your wrist behind the ball all the time. It becomes okay. Other variations we can use are crease variations. So whether we're bowling close or wide, and that variation really is determined by your momentum line. That's your comfort line, that's your main position. Okay, and we've set it up here with these yellow orange strips. This is the variation. So ultimately all we're doing is we're just taking our momentum line and we're shifting it a little bit to the left and making sure we're still landing in or around our momentum line. One thing you'll notice there is actually I'm off balance because I got too tight on that back foot contact. So really important to make sure that when you do go wide of the crease, that we're not ending up crossing over with our feet, or we're not ending up too wide because it starts interfering with everything else. Okay, so we've spoken a lot about momentum and our lower body. But what does it actually mean for our upper body? So once we get into our back foot contact position and then into our front foot contact position, again, making sure our feet are correctly aligned, we need to make sure that our top half is working efficiently. Okay, so it means our front arm is key in making sure that we keep our momentum going forward. So we want to try and reach out and try and grab, whether it be the batsman's grill, and then you want to try and pull the batsman back in, which ultimately gets your shoulders rotating up and over, which will give you that snap, and it also ensure that you've got that really nice wrist position. It also helps get the ball slightly fuller, and that is a key if you're particularly bowling with the new ball and you want to be trying to swing it and nicking off a right-handed batter. If you can get that out and the snap, you become a very, very effective bowler. So the other thing about the top half is this bit, so ball path. Where does the ball go? So we discussed in our run-up that if the ball is going all over the place here through your run-up, it creates instability and becomes difficult to be consistent. Same thing once you take off and land at back foot contact. If your ball is underneath your armpit, the ball will have to go out for you then to get back on line to bowl the ball. Now at pace, that becomes very difficult to be consistent. So you see this sort of action. That's when you get twisting in your back, and that can lead to potential injuries. So as much as possible, you want to try and keep right pocket, right shoulder, straight down, turn and through. That's your ball path, essentially. You want to try and keep it. Do not cross your midline, straight down, turn and through. Okay, right arm round the wicket to a left-handed batter. It's something that's come into the game over the last few years as a very effective angle. Couple of differences here. So again, we've got our momentum line and the principle is still the same. But actually our momentum line is, instead of being lined up at off stump, our momentum line is lined up at the keeper or the keeper's left knee. And the reason why I like to do this is so that we get a good position on the crease at release. So I'm still in a nice solid position. But because we're round the wicket, our momentum and what we want to do, because we're twisting like this, we want to go that way. But actually, if we lined up to off stump, I would actually end up running straight across the pitch, which we're not allowed to do. So we line up our momentum towards the keeper's left knee, and it allows us then to still have the ball traveling down that line. And if it swings in, it's going to swing in to hit the top of off stump, or we can again get our wobbled seam, but with the angle that we've created, it means the batters are actually drawn in to the ball coming down, and then if it nips away, you bring your slips into play. So key thing with bowling around the wicket to the left-handed is making sure we line up your momentum with the keeper's left knee. Okay, so once we've established a good wrist position, good release position, and our momentum flowing towards the target, our attention turns to this elusive area, the good area that everyone refers to. In first class cricket, international cricket, it's between generally 4 to 6 meters. I would say in club cricket, you want to be a slightly bit fuller because the pitches are slightly a bit softer and the ball does a little bit more So you want to be ever so slightly fuller, probably more kind of 3 to 5 metres. What we talk about in first class cricket here is not only the ability to hit this area, but it's how you work this area. And that's what we're going to focus on next. As we said before, it's a general area and we talk about it generally, but actually the better bowlers start to cut this up. So whether we operate at back of a length or full of a length, or whether it's swinging a lot, in which case if it's swinging out for a right armer faced to a right-handed batter, you might end up operating on this side of the box, whereas if you're an in-swinger or a left armer, you might operate on that side of the box. The other disciplines in there, we talk about wobble seam. So we see the modern batter now batting generally on middle and off, maybe even off stump quite a lot of the time. And what's happened, particularly in England, is the wobbled seam has come into fashion, which means you operate on this side of the box and you're looking just to nip it back in to take out the batter's sort of off stump or pad, ideally. So we just start to divide this up, and as we get better and better and better, you can start having little games within this little box, and you can start making your own Hawkeyes by chalking the balls and understanding where your balls are landing. Bowling at a left-hander, if you're swinging the ball back into the left-hander, again, you're going to be operating on the right side of this box. Again, depending on how much it's swinging. If it's swinging a lot, you might be quite far out. If it's not swinging so much, you'll be more in the middle. And if you want a wobble seam and nip it across, then you're probably going to be around the kind of middle and off line with the ball nipping across.
Before we get into the specifics, do you want us to talk about your philosophies when it comes to coaching fast bowling first?
Yeah, I think first and foremost you have to build a relationship with the person that you're working with. You've got to gain their trust, because bowling's not easy, and you're going to question a few things, or you're going to be working on a few things, or breaking down the action, or trying to push them to do things a bit harder or a bit faster. So you've got to build a relationship with them and build their trust, and then it's all about a strong basics game. I firmly believe that having good basics in place will help you develop all the other skills around it. But as bowlers, we've still got to be able to go back to hitting the top of off. But that means you need a reliable action that repeats itself well in terms of your positioning at the crease, strong base, high release point, all that type of stuff. So pretty simple in a way, but obviously it's the simple stuff that's sometimes the hardest to do.
Yeah, can't wait to get into this technical masterclass for fast bowling. Let's go.
So if we go into the run-up and start speaking about the run-up, and I firmly believe that the run-up's a very natural thing. It's got to be specific to the bowler itself. And if we're talking like young cricketers, I mean, if we talk older cricketers, they've probably all got the run-up sorted, and there might be a few tweaks and stuff in terms of taking a bit of length out of it and shortening it a little bit so you can be snappy at the crease. But if we're talking youngsters who's trying to find out what run-up's natural for them, the easiest thing that's ever been done is you run with your eyes closed and feel and bowl when your body feels ready to bowl. Some I've done with youngsters in the past, and they've been trying to find out where's the best time for them to bowl in terms of build up all this energy to bowl and then release it. All we've done before is just put a cone down on the floor to start off from, run with your eyes closed. When you feel ready to bowl, just bowl the ball. It doesn't matter where the ball goes, because we're in an open field. It doesn't matter where the ball goes, but it's more the feel that they've built up all this energy in their run-up and they feel ready to bowl the ball. And obviously with that run-up is if you're starting them from the same spot all the time, you've got to mark where they're landing each time, all right? So it might be a couple of times where they're a bit long, a bit short of the first mark or whatever, but over time it'll gradually be that they're landing in a similar place all the time. So just marking cones or little markers each time, and after say 10 balls, 12 balls or whatever it might be, you'll get a constant of roughly where they're landing all the time, which will then be their run-up that they can mark out. So if we talk about the approach to the crease, and when we get to the crease, you're going to get a lot of different things in terms of lads jumping up high and landing back foot side on, and obviously front foot at the crease. You want a strong base at the crease, whether they're side on or front on, whether they run through the crease or jump. There's going to be variance all the time. The reason why bowlers jump in general is to get the feet in position, which means your foot's more landing side on or slightly mid, to then get that solid base. All right, so it's worth looking at that. It's worth looking at how their back foot lands. Do they need to jump that high? Do they need to jump at all? If they're front on, it normally means they can run through the crease a little bit because they don't have to get the back foot in position. So whatever you do is, if you are mid, I was always mid as a bowler, is landing, and it's then where this front leg goes. So is this front leg aligned to the target of where you want to go to the batsman, or are you getting slightly crossed? If you're slightly crossed, it might mean your top half's got to rotate out to get it where you want it to go. So it's all about the alignment. So whatever happens down the bottom here will have a reaction of what goes on at the top, all right? So look at feet alignment, where they land. Is it nicely aligned and it's going forward? And then from there, then you look upwards at the release point, yeah? So you look up at the release point. It's the release point nice and high and over the top, which is perfect. Are they falling away a little bit? Again, if the feet are aligned but you're falling away up here, is it the front arm and what's that doing? So it's about breaking down the action into different things. Obviously, if they land slightly cross but their release point's perfect and they're bowling perfect, do we need to intervene or just leave them and work on skill in terms of, we've got bowlers here that do get slightly tight to the crease and swing the ball beautifully, but then get lined up because they're swinging it consistently. Then it's a challenge for them, is actually coming a bit more mid-crease and keeping the swing and drawing the batsman out into edging the ball or drawing them away from defending the stumps by creating an angle. Again, it's all different things you can work with the bowler, depending on what they do, what skill they deliver. But yeah, I'd always advise to look downwards first at the feet and then work up. So another thing you can look at is head position on release. Again, we talk from the ground up, but head position on release, you still want things going forward. You still want to know that my release point's high, my head position's forward. You could look and you might see people off to the side like this, and then it's, your release point might be slightly off. You might come over the perpendicular and push it because you're falling out that way, or you could be slinging and come round it because, again, your heads came out. So a good practice is always really trying to force your head forward on release, which then brings everything else over and over the top. Again, we speak about the head being one of the heaviest parts of the body. If you can get the feeling of that going forward on release, everything else has got to follow in terms of your body, and your follow through has got to follow. Another thing we speak about and look out for is obviously the non-bowling arm and the position that gets itself into. A lot of people are different. A lot of people, get across themselves, get open, stuff like that. But it's more the pathway it goes on. So if you're approaching the crease and you get into your action, the arm's coming up. Is the arm still going towards where you want it to go? And does it follow that pathway down and into the body and out through the back? It doesn't have to go massively out through the back, but it's got to still stay tight. You don't want it coming out to the side and forcing you to lose your wrist and your accuracy with the bowling arm. So you just want it to come through nice and then drag you forward. So whatever you're doing with the ball here and you load up, this arm's coming up and it's coming up and forcing you forward, and then with that you're then pulling it in. You look at some of the best bowlers in the world, they sort of like grab you and grab the batsman and pull it in there, which then forces the top half. We talk about the top half momentum going forward. That keeps everything going forward there, so you're not falling out and losing it and having to push and pull with your bowling arm. You're actually pulling in, and again with that it's forcing everything forward where you want it to go, down the wicket towards the target. So if we're talking about wrist position or seam position in the bowling action, depending on what you're going to do, some people obviously straight up just to try and really rip down the back of the ball, get the seam nice and bolt upright. Some people just offset it a little bit, so if I was a lefty and I was looking to swing it back, I'd just offset it a little bit so the shiny side was here in my hand, just so it was more pronounced and I was going to catch and swing in, hopefully. You've also got the other bowlers that will just predominantly bowl wobble balls. So for me, if I was as a lefty going to bowl a wobble ball, I'd offset the seam slightly, just so as it was coming out of the hand, you'll see it'll just wobble side to side a little bit. And that's what you want. That's when you see people getting nip and movement laterally out the wicket. That's what they tend to bowl. So the ball just wobbles slightly side to side, just catches or won't catch it and just skid on a little bit. So again, it asks a few questions of the batsman. But that's been a very productive ball over the years, especially in England with wickets that just offer a little bit of seam movement. It's just being able to wobble the ball and nip it. So there's obviously different stages of the game and what the ball's doing for you as a bowler. If you're finding the ball's not doing anything, it's quite a flat wicket and you want to bowl stump to stump and you're bowling a left-hander as a right-handed bowler, so a lot of people come round and just target the stumps and then set a field accordingly. You've also got them days where the ball's just not doing what you want it to do, in terms of you might just be pushing it in, things aren't working. Sometimes you don't have to fight that, you can come up with another plan. So if you are just pushing it across the left-hander slightly too much as a as a right arm bowler, again you can come round and then attack the stumps and keep that movement that you're getting, that movement away from the movement away from the left hander, and keep that going rather than trying to fight it out in the middle. So sometimes you've got to adapt to what's going on in the game and what's happening for you in the game in terms of what the ball's doing. Go with it and still make it an attacking option. Sometimes you've just got to, you know, judging by how the game situation's going, the wicket's gone flat, I've got to change the field, I've got to have straight fields, I've got to have people in front of the bat, I've got to bowl stump to stump. That's when you start using angles on the crease and stuff, whether it's over or round, just to make sure they're hitting the ball to where you want to go. And it's just a patience game. That's the beauty of county cricket, 4-day cricket, even white ball cricket to an extent. You've got to try and get the batsman hitting the ball where you want it to go. So we're just going to go on about variations in white ball cricket. You've got your Yorkers, your slow balls, your bumpers, all very important deliveries that you need in your armoury when it comes to bowling in white ball cricket and limited overs cricket. We speak a lot about bowlers still being able to hit the top of the stump, still being attacking, but then the skill is, if I go to a change up, if I go to a slow ball, am I still able to hit that rough area that I've been hitting, you know, with my stock delivery? Am I still able to hit like the top of the stumps and challenge it and force a mistake by not giving too much away in terms of a big change in what we're doing? If we can get enough pace off the ball, that's great, but again, it's the release point. You still want the release point high with your slow balls, whether you go to a cutter and get really over the top to generate some bounce out the wicket. You don't want to give them any sort of visuals that something drastic is changing, that's changing your action to actually bowl that slow ball or anything. So disguise is important. So if your release point's roughly the same for a slower ball, you're still over the top, but you're able to adjust your fingers and get really over the top of it to generate some bounce out the wicket. That's fantastic. Again, with a bumper, you've got to really commit. You've got to really get over the top of that, over the top of the ball and really hit the wicket. You don't want the bouncer only getting this high. You still want it to get up here, because this is what, you know, batsmen train for these days and putting it out the park. So your bumper's really got to be on the money and get it nice and high. Again, that comes from a solid base, really being over the top, pulling down with your front arm, getting right over it and really hitting the wicket hard. Don't try and force too hard and then lose this side of the body and then have to push it along, because they're the ones that don't quite get up as high and, you know, end up sort of this high, whereas you want it to be up here. If we're talking Yorkers, it's a very specific ball to bowl. You've got to find a way of working out what's your best angle to execute a Yorker. Don't be afraid to try different things. Don't be afraid, if you're a right armer, to come round the wicket, and it might mean I've got to access a bit or use a bit more of my body, but I can actually get a Yorker in better to a right-handed batter from this line, from around the wicket. You've got to explore things and see. Don't just try and force your way just to do one way, which is over the wicket, the traditional way. You've got to explore different angles, different approaches to actually find out, with the action that I've got, what's the best way of executing that Yorker. A lot of people talk about trying to get a little bit slingy and trying to get it in there. If that's the case and you find that works for you, I urge you that afterwards you do a lot of repair work, and you do a lot of repair work with looking after your stock delivery and getting back over the top, because you don't want to get into the habit of being low and slinging it in to try and get the Yorker in, and then when you go back to hit the top of the stumps, you've still got this sort of action going on. You still want to get over the top, you still want to repair your best delivery.
There's a lot said now about, when it comes to pace bowling, about having that shoulder hip separation, braced front leg. For as a coach now, any tips you can give youngsters trying to work their way up, increase that pace? Is it just all about going away, experimenting, working on your action by yourself and seeing what works?
I'm so glad that I wasn't overcoached. I am so glad that no one threw the technical book at me, and I was allowed to go and find out what I'm about. And if I say that these days, you know, you watch schoolboy cricket these days, and you see, especially I'm talking from a South African point of view now, and how coaches, they're the umpires, you know, they're the umpires out there, and they tell kids, they set their fields, they tell them, listen, it's all about line and length. It's all about line and length. You've got to learn how to bowl line and length. And so I knew I had pace, but I had the right voices around me to say, don't worry about it if it goes wrong for you. So I just want you to bowl quick. If you bowl a wide, you bowl a wide. Maybe that was just that old-fashioned coaching style that people just said, just go and have some fun, you know, just go and enjoy yourself. You know, one day you'll find out what you're about. And I think it was the best messages, or the right message that I always had, you know. So for a coach now, or teachers or coaches that coach the youngsters now, we had many coaching forums on these platforms now, on Zoom and Microsoft Teams and all of that, where, you know, what is the right way for a youngster? Goodness me, the message I just want to say is, let the kid just explore, let him enjoy himself, let it find out what success tastes like. You're going to have good days with a bad action, right? And you're going to have bad days with a bad action. But at the same time, you slowly but surely unpacking little things that work for you. And yes, video feedback these days, we didn't have that technology back in those days. You just plowed along and off you go. But now I think it's a little bit overcoached now for young kids. And there's so much information that youngsters have got to process. And I just think that the enjoyment and the unraveling of his own action needs to be found out by that young man. But the mom and dad sits next to the field, and they shouting advice, and, you know, you're not quite here, or you're not quite there, you know. So it's really tough. I think it's very, very, very tough for some kids these days, because there's so much information getting thrown around.
Obviously, a lot now said about a fast bowler and their holding their variations, as well as like nailing their Yorker, slower balls, etc. Were you big on that? And again, from a coaching perspective, what advice would you give a youngster perhaps watching this?
We you know, I think now, if I can start there, it's more precise. We train precisely. We put more emphasis on scenario-based training. There's great emphasis on executing the Yorker. So you have those scenario-based trainings where you just take all the other stuff away from first-class cricketers and say, right, you know, for the next 25 minutes, all you're going to do is bowl Yorkers and execute from over and around. So you've got to explore those avenues. Back then, okay, we got to bowl Yorkers. We know about the ball reversing. We didn't train very well. We didn't have clear plans of how we want to execute. And we didn't really nail down the what ifs. You know, what are we going to do when so-and-so is here? That's if we play against these teams, the emphasis on Javed Miandad, what are we going to do when he's in the last 10? So we never really broke it down to those finer details than it is now, because there's so much more on it now. And my great advice to youngsters is, you've got to, if it's white ball cricket, bring a precise plan to a net session that you want to execute. So if your aim is that you want to bring to a net session, say tomorrow, is that what does my game need for the half an hour that I'm due to bowl, or the 40 minutes that I'm due to bowl? Is it, I need to reverse the ball. I need to reverse the ball from over and around. How good are my Yorkers? I need to practice with a reverse swing ball. And I watched Zahir Khan and now Nets here back here many moons ago in 2008, how he did that unbelievably well against MS Dhoni. And he had three balls. He had a ball that didn't reverse. He had a ball that's reversed slightly, and he had a ball that reversed a lot. And he just trained from death bowling, just death bowling. Just did it from over and around, changed the angle all the time, so he gets used to doing that. And for him, it obviously became natural because he was used to it, because he trained it in, you know. So you got to be very specific.
If a youngster came to you for your best piece of advice, what would it be?
Depends. Well, it can be any cricketer, and I think Brian Lara says it a lot as well. And I would just say, you know, everyone would say going out and enjoy yourself, okay? But also understand what you're trying to achieve, and not have too many plans. And don't come with too many things you want to improve on every single day. Pick 2 things in a session that you want to be successful at. If you walk away from that training session, you must actually feel so gratified and so say, you know what, I've done that well. I've really done that well. But a lot of kids come to a training session, and I want to say to kids out there, the training ground is the most important place of the development of your career. You will, if you come there for a 2-hour, 3-hour session, you got to walk away from there and you want people to talk about what you've achieved. You know, you want to be, and I think the great learning from Hansi Cronje was to say leadership is, I want you to walk away from that training session. I want people to buzz around what Allan Donald achieved out of that training session. And just bring a real good, solid plan of what you want to successfully achieve from your training session, and be so ruthless, be absolutely ruthless and emphatic of what you want to achieve out of a training session, and your accuracy and planning. Don't leave it up to the coach. Do not leave it up to the coach to do it for you. Bring your own plan. Remember, if you have a plan, you own it.
So yeah, we're here at Lord's, the home of cricket. Jordan, you're going to give us some tips for young players, young fast bowlers, some of the basics. Do you want to start from the top and maybe start with the grip, and what would your advice be for a youngster if they could just get given, chuck the ball?
Yeah, absolutely. I think in 100 cricket or 2020 cricket, I think you can change your grip on the white ball quite a lot. Me myself, early in the game, I would like to go straight down the seam, and hopefully the ball moves off the seam, or it maybe swings a little bit. And then, if depending on what the pitch is like, sometimes going cross seam is also helpful, because it can skid off the smooth part, or it can also hit the seam and grip a little. So it's just a matter of kind of reading the game and trying different things to obviously get the batsman out, which is the key thing.
How does it differ from a red ball game?
I think with the red ball, you're always looking to use the seam and stand the seam up, trying to swing the ball, whether that be into the batsman or away from the batsman. And also when you're trying to swing the ball, it can hit the seam and move around off the pitch. Like I said, with if you bowl cross seam in white ball cricket, you try and hit the kind of smooth side so it skids, whereas in red ball cricket, you want to keep these sides as nice as possible so the ball swings around.
A lot said about variations, especially in the white ball game. You're known for having a box of tricks. Do you want to just run through some of the basics, slower balls, etc.?
I don't want to give too much away, but yeah, so my go-to slow ball is the back of the hand slow ball. So I will grip it like a normal orthodox ball, and then as I release the ball, I'll come round the back, and it'll come out the back of my hand, and hopefully with that it dips, I get some revolutions on, hopefully grips into the pitch and maybe bounces a little bit more. Another one that I use again, a split finger ball. So you can see that grip. But what happens there is that stops the revolutions of the ball going backwards, and instead it actually goes forwards and then dips on the batsman through the air. And then another quite generic slow ball that I use is just running the fingers down the ball. I use that a lot to a left-hander because the ball tends to grip into the pitch and go away from the left-handed batsman. And yeah, that's probably my box of tricks, as you like to say, and try and keep them as secret as possible and use them when I think it's gonna work.
How do you go about practicing it?
I think it's one of those things, so those balls actually took me quite a long time to nail down, the back of the hand slow ball especially, because like I said, I go straight down the seam, but when you come around the back, you want the seam to come out dead straight, so then it dips on the batsman, so getting that actual position of the ball correct, and it's never going to come out the same all the time, but I try my best to get it as straight as possible, and it took me probably 6 months to nail it down and make sure I was confident in bowling that in a game.
So all about just practicing in the nets of a short run for a young player, perhaps just starting out, and then before actually taking into a game?
Absolutely. I think it's important as a young player to start from the very, very bottom in terms of basics, and maybe from a standing position, just getting used to bowling that, keeping that ball in the wrist position, and then coming around the back and switching the actual direction the ball comes out, and then you can gradually move back to a little jogging, and then you full run up as well, and make sure you bowl it with 100% effort to get the revolutions going down and dipping on the batsman.
When it comes to Yorkers, bouncers, is it all about having your bowling action almost like to the eye of the batsman, just as same as possible? just to not give anything away?
Absolutely, that is the most important thing with all these balls, is making sure there's no cues from the bowling action that's going to give it away to the batsman, and they're prepared then for what's coming. It's again like having a box of tricks. You try and hide them as much as possible and use them at the most effective time. A Yorker, for example, again, I will normally go straight down the seam, which is my generic position of holding the ball. And sometimes when you're bowling Yorkers towards the end of an innings, hopefully the ball is a little bit more scuffed, and then what we call reverse swing, where it tails into the batsman and you can get a little bit of movement late on. A bouncer as well depends massively on dimensions of the ground. As you can see at Lords, you have a slope running from the top side down to the bottom on the left, and you want to use the dimensions. So if there's a bouncer, if you're going to use the bouncer, then you're probably not going to bowl it to a short side down the slope, because it's probably not going to take as much to hit for 6 as it would do up towards the far end. So yeah, that is my technique for bowling Yorkers and bouncers, and my thought process when I'm bowling.
Does your front arm position change in any way? Was it the same? Like, for example, like for a Yorker, do you almost like reach forward a little bit more? Yeah, not necessarily. I think obviously the release point in terms of where I release it, I think it's very subconscious. I would never know it. It's probably an inch or maybe a couple of inches difference, but I think when you're bowling the ball, it's all about what you're telling your brain to do, and it just does it. So I think keeping that front left, the left arm, your strong arm, or your right arm if you're left arm bowler, as strong as possible in the action, and making sure that you drag down to get as much power through the ball. Where are you on like the specifics of the technicalities of the bowling action? A lot of people you almost see on YouTube talk about having a braced front leg to enable to bowl fast. Does that come into your mind, especially when you're growing up? Yeah, I think it helps. It's something I think that you kind of, as you gradually bowl, your technique is kind of given to you. I think there's a lot of people, to be fair, I've got a braced front leg, but don't bowl as fast as some other people with braced front legs, and I think people with a non-braced front leg are sometimes quicker than me as well. But I think it does help to kind of catapult you over and a bit of a snap through your action, and allow you to kind of bowl a bit of a faster ball. When it comes to tactics, you did mention it before about the slurp, etc. But in a white ball game, say you've bowled a lot of like last overs, like at the death specifically. How do you go about almost setting a batsman up and defending a total, etc.? Yeah, in those last set. Exactly. That is the thing, is setting the batsman and trying not to be too obvious with whatever you're trying to do in terms of, if you're going Yorkers, maybe you go wide Yorkers to keep the ball away from the short boundary. Like I said, not being predictable, so it might be a slower wide ball. Making sure you're not set up so the batsman can predict you and walk across and hit you to a short side, and that's the whole game really. I think you see a lot of it in the 100 in terms of trying to outsmart the batsman, and that's how it is. And the last one, what would be your best piece of advice for a young quick if they came up to you asking you? Yeah, I think it's just learn as much as possible. I think the same with the batting now, is people are trying obviously scoops and reverse sweeps from a young age, and I think to be one step ahead of batsmen now is to have as many skills as you can, but also make sure that those skills are very well practiced, and when you go into a game you're confident to use them. But also don't forget your basics in terms of seam position and bowling it with a good seam, and making sure you try and knock it off, hit the pitch, and whether that's nipping into the batsman on a way or as a little bit of swing, that's the way to go. Jordan, perfect, thank you. No worries. Cricket Life Stories with me, Neel Khagram. Today at Trent Bridge, we're joined by Kevin Shine. Kevin, how's it all going?
Yeah, good, Neil. Good, thank you.
So Kevin, we're just going to talk through fast bowling.
Absolutely, something that we all love.
We've got many years of knowledge on the topic. As I said off camera, I'm just going to talk as if I'm just a layman to the subject. And when someone talks about fast bowling, the first thing that I think of is the run-up. Would that be a fair comment? And is that where perhaps a young player just coming through, is that where sometimes they almost like lose their pace?
Yes, it would be, but if you think about it, that's where it all starts. So you can't actually bowl very quickly or very, very skillfully with no run-up at all. So if you can get that part of it as comfortable as you can, then I think you've actually got the beginnings of what would be hopefully a repeatable action.
Is that the key, repeatable action?
I think it's repeatable within your own technique. And you hear the word technique, people get really, really nervous of it, and I'm very, very keen to stress that it's your own technique. You know, when you see youngsters who will mimic or copy, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that, because they'll try and interpret it in their own way. But as long as they don't try and become something that they can't become, and they make the most out of the gifts that they've got.
Then if you say a young player again is not sure how to even mark out their run-up, how would you even just advise them or give them a few pointers of how to do it?
Well, I mean, and that can be a tough one. Once again, I'm lucky enough to work with players for a longish period of time, so I can look at how they learn, and we can go through a lot of trial and error stuff. So we might just start with just pace it out as you feel you would do, and we'll start from there. We'll try and pick up your rhythm. I'm a big believer in run-ups being as long as you want them to be. I'm not a believer in them having to be short, because fast bowling is all about rhythm, and if you've got a big long run-up and that's where your rhythm comes from, fantastic, because you'll actually conserve energy doing that anyway. A short run-up doesn't necessarily mean you conserve energy. So once again, I think be happy to have a bit of trial and error. Try a longer run-up. If it doesn't suit you, try a medium or a shorter run-up. But most importantly, it should look smooth. There should almost be a glide phase where you can pick up balance, and then that balance will take you into the weird stuff, which is your bowling action when you do some really crazy stuff.
If we just say, we've got a practice wicket here, we just walk over. Again, if I'm watching international cricket on the television and you see some of the modern day fast bowlers, a lot of commentators mention fast bowling and brace front leg snapping over your bowling action. What would you say to that if you hear that from a commentator, for example?
It's all good technique points that are out there, but they're not absolutely crucial to have. You can see 90 plus mile an hour bowlers who don't have a braced front leg. There are other parts of a bowling action that you would consider useful for bowling fast, but once again, this is where the individuality comes into it. If someone's not got a braced front leg, but they, for example, and some people say they delay the bowling arm, or they'll really flex from the trunk before they release the ball, they're all good things to have. Once again, it's making it look comfortable, look rhythmical, and look relaxed, and then I think you'll find that the whole sequence of the bowling action becomes more simple. Don't look to isolate it. It's more about, can you see a flow and rhythm in the run-up? Can you see flow and timing in the bowling action? And if you're coaching like that, I've got a feeling that you'll probably get more success out of the end product.
What about the front arm position? Where does that all come into the mix?
Once again, it's an individual thing. The front arm generally, or front arm position, is a consequence of what's happening in the run up and the jump gather. So once again, you've got to look at that and see how it fits into all of the bowling sequence. If you just concentrate on the front arm, you might be losing something else in the action that's really important.
And if a player's got all the sequences up to this point correct, and then they almost lose it sometimes in the follow through, what would you say in terms of a correction drill?
So I generally go away from correction drills. I try to put visual cues down to, just try and drive through as far as you can, or you go with, a verbal cue, commit to your bowling action, rather than try and do this with your right leg or your left leg or your front arm. That's really confusing sometimes. You're trying to just coach the whole action rather than just isolated parts of it.
And what about when it comes to variations, i.e. moving the ball? Again, how does that all fit into the realm of fast bowling?
So you're talking about craft there, and the craft of bowling, generally bowlers will naturally run up and they will be able to make the ball bowl or move somewhere. Once you get a good structure in place, so a good technique, that's when you can really start to unravel the craft and what they're able to do, whether it's in the air, off the pitch, or deception. So once again, that would be part of the sequence that you do. They'll have their own natural craft and movement that they've got, and then you're seeing, well, what else can we add to your game as you start to build their more fluent rhythmical action.
I'm sure you also must get this as a coach, but injury prevention as a fast bowler? Is there such thing, or is it all again individuality and just almost?
So look, one thing's almost guaranteed: if you try and bowl fast, you're going to pick up injuries. You are. Firstly, you've got to be fit and strong. So you have got to train to bowl. You've also got to bowl to get fit. And then I think there are certain things that you'd look to do to try and make your actions safe, but once again, they can be quite confusing. All I'd say is that if you train well, you've got a balanced amount of bowling, you just go and have fun with it. Don't fear getting injured. Just go and release yourself when you get out into the middle.
And the players are just about to come back on, but what's your best tip for a young player?
Go out there, enjoy it. You don't have to bowl at the speed of light to be successful. You get some very, very successful bowlers in international and county cricket because they're very, very patient. They work hard on their game and they never stop learning.
Kevin, perfect. Thank you. So Carl, just for a young player, a young quick, do you want to give some of your best tips and advice? Perhaps just learning from your experiences coming through, injuries, big problem for a lot of young players.
I think first and foremost you want to enjoy it, don't you? You want to enjoy what you do. Try and bowl as quick as you can. Try and swing the ball. Don't try and lose those skills. I guess injuries are sort of part and parcel of what happens with fast bowling. It's sort of something you got to make peace with in your own mind and stuff. But for me, I always think that injuries give you a chance to take a step back and work on your game and come back better and stronger. So I think if you can use those little sort of setbacks to just come back better, then you'll be all right.
When you were coming through the ranks, how much emphasis did you put on the technical side of things? A lot said at the moment about having a braced front leg, shoulder hip separation. Is that something that you put a lot of emphasis on coming through?
I think it's something I sort of vaguely look at. I think there's a lot of different aspects to bowling, and I think everyone does it in their own sort of unique way. So, there's not one way I think to bowl quick and one way to sort of get it right. It's whatever works for each individual. But certainly something that I like to look at is some of the technical aspects and how you can kind of get better and get the results you're after.
When you work in your craft, seam, swing bowling, any tips for a young player?
I guess it's I like to try and strip it back a little bit, try and do like really low level sort of stuff, some seam release into a baseball mitt, off a few steps and stuff. I think the more you can sort of groove that low level stuff, it makes it a lot quite a bit easier when you go back to your full run. So I think just trying to oil and grease is sort of term that I like to use to sort of take care of things at a lower level.
And just one last one, a lot of cricket being played, test cricket, short form cricket, a young player again perhaps struggling to adapt across all the formats. How have you done it so successfully?
I don't know, I think I'm still trying to work that out. I think if you can have a strong base to your game and stuff, hopefully that'll sort of take you across all forms, and just about trying to learn. I guess the more you're sort of exposed to those different situations, you sort of take different experiences, and hopefully just the more you do that, the better you'll be.
Carl, perfect. Go well today.
Thank you very much.
Any tips you can give in terms of the swing seam bowling element?
Only after 90, as late as that, 95, I met a baseball coach in South Africa that taught me a little trick, and it's just throwing, and loading your wrist with the ball in that position where it's slightly towards first slip, and just to load up and lock it and throw, just throwing with your wrist locked into a mitt, and doing that about, say, before every net session, just doing it about 15 to 20, 25 to 30 times, just slowly, don't have to kill your shoulder. I felt you just saw that seam sit up so beautifully. It didn't wobble. It just came out of my hands and my fingers so well that it was the best drill. It's a simple drill that a guy saw in me, just said, well, listen, try this. And from a baseball coach. So that helped me a great deal. And it's something that we still do today with some kids now. Even the pros here, I have them warm up just to feel with a red and white ball, just to see how quietly you can keep the seam upright with this motion of just throwing it into a mitt.
So is wrist position the most important thing when it comes to swing bowling?
Yeah, it's huge. I mean, it is huge, and a lot of the great fast bowlers had different, obviously, ways. And Wasim Akram, you saw Wasim Akram when he came in, he was in that position, he was locked. Curtly Ambrose is up there high, and it's a very loose wrist, very whippy loose wrist. I couldn't do that. It was more of a let's lock it in, keep it there, and then back and over. So, but yeah, I mean, you've got to practice those things, and even from a static position where you just load up in at the crease and just practice that ball going down every single time. You know, just try and watch the ball come out and just all the way down. And it's a feel thing. It really is. You know, it's a muscle memory thing that you've got to practice in, and it takes time to perfect.
Talked about Yorkers, slower balls. How are you practicing it?
If you practice Yorkers, you know, you have to hitting the stumps all the time. So when you go to practice, okay, so think like that. You know, I'm going to develop this Yorker today. I'm going to bowl 5 hours, 6 hours of Yorkers, just one ball. Just try to bowl Yorker, nail it, and see how you do that. You know, like if, for example, if you're 50-50, the next time you go and beat that, you're on milestone, whatever you call, you know, on target. But bowling Yorker for me is really important, you know, like where you release the ball. So you need to release the ball, like when I say, you know, like hand up, and you're watching the base. You know, I played with 3 different guys. They were all different, you know, like Azhar Mahmood, Waqar Yunus, and Shoaib Akhtar, myself. They were all different, you know. Azhar Mahmood used to watch on the top of the stumps, you know, bails. Waqar was middle, and Shoaib was really on the shoe side. I was like that. So we used to practice that. And the best thing I find out, you know, when you practice in Yorker, you feel, you know, you're touching that spot where you want to release the ball. So that means you release the ball late. So this is the best way, you know, and it works for a lot of people, you know, a lot of my bowlers, you know, Shane Shaffrey, look at that, how beautiful bowler he is. And he bowled Yorker with a new ball, old ball, and Hassan Ali and all these guys, you know, the same method, we practice that. And whenever you go in a slow ball, you know, like back of the hand, you need to work it out, you know, how you're going to do that. It's just when you're turning your hand, so then you finish the ball like this. So it's just wrist coming towards back, and then you release the ball. So in that, you know, like when you practice a lot, again, the back of the hand, you can bowl 3 different balls. People think, okay, back of the hand, you know, like it's a different release point. You know, like when you release the point, you know, above the eye line, ball will dip. From the normal, you know, ball will land on the length you normally bowl. And then if you want to bowl a bumper, you go further down. So it's 3 point. One is there, one is there, and there. So it's just like 2 o'clock, 12 o'clock, and almost 10 o'clock. So it's just different release points.
I know you're a very effective outswing bowler as well. I know you got cricket ball to hand there. Do you have any tips in terms of like grip positions, little like in terms of wrist, arm positions that you use to great effect?
Yeah, totally. And look, I'm pulling out one of these from a mate, and you know, I tend to do a lot of coaching when I moved here. Before the big T20 franchises kicked in, I did a lot of coaching up here north of Brisbane, and school camps, holiday clinics and stuff with a guy, Brad Murphy, and really enjoyed it. And so a ball like this, whether it's for spin bowling and showing grips and stuff and using, you know, a dominant finger to do that, or finger spinners turning the doorknob the other way, it's almost like I'm better to be standing and showing a verse I'm bowling down that way. If this was orthodox and that's my rough side and that's my shiny side, I tend to show kids in coaching that, you know, trying to hold it in a comfortable position that you're not actually choking it right back in here, and that you want to have it out there. And because, see, in terms of my physicality or lack of it, is that my digits aren't long. They're not a big hand and not big fingers, as opposed to you think about Curtly Ambrose and, you know, those guys had such an advantage with long fingers. Walsh, commentator with Ian Bishop, massive hands. And a ball would look like a stripped down tennis ball for them. So in terms of getting all of that, you're trying to get that lovely release to come out so you're not choking it. So you really, I talk about just putting your fingers in there so it's not choking. There is that gap to do that. And that in terms of another drill to get the ball to come out, because we're trying to swing it to go down the pitch to a right-hander that's facing me down there, here's again, I mentioned my rough side, my shiny side. The rough side would suck it out to go away to the slip cord of a right-hander. Gets a bit confusing now, Neil, that when that rough side and that shiny side for reverse swing stays the same. And because it's called reverse swing, because it's reverse of the orthodox textbook of that swinging out, I'd have that there, and I'd have that there, and I'd tilt it slightly in. Same thing, rough, shiny, but release it a bit like Malinga, get lower on the clock, and then that would swing and suck in, particularly the white ball in one-day cricket. But same with the red ball and old. And you'll see that, I mean, the advent of the last 20 years is that is so dominant, reverse swing. And you talk about the highest level, you can't reverse swing a cricket ball like Anderson's doing and Broad that in tandem together. And then you've got Bolt and Southey for New Zealand. And then you think about particular subcontinent bowlers, very good at it. You encourage kids to learn to get the grip right. And then the other one to do is the other technical drill I'd like to do is that you have children sitting around at a young age that if they really are an aspiring swing quick bowler, then you sit around doing lots of this. Now, I remember seeing the great Richard Hadley when I shared the dressing room with the Knight, Sir Richard, is that he had a 50-cent piece. And that was quite a big coin. And he would just flick it up. And it's amazing how much it would come out beautifully vertical. And then he'd progress from that, the coin, and then he'd just get the ball because it was his job, as I inherited it, it was his job to choose the cricket ball. So you'd be sitting around even at home, and I've seen subsequently guys younger than me in a different era, they would sit around and talk, and they'd be chatting and just doing lots of that, sitting around and flicking because you were flicking and working on that release. And that was all about getting your wrist behind the ball to get it to come down how you would like it to come down, whether it was outswing, turn it over, and your wrist turn it, and you were trying to get it to come down and then swing into a right hand or away to a lefty. That was key. And a lot of that, encouraging kids, and particularly this apparatus, red and white. And so you can see it clearly coming out and not either wobbling because you're trying to get a strong wrist behind the ball to swing it, have that deception. And if you're an aspiring pace bowler, you've got to be able to do something in the air. And that was the beauty of it. Whether it's been naughty and a lot of that history over it, the old being naughty and scratching, and some got to the extent where they were biting it and being rather naughty in the 90s, is that you have to be able to do something in the air because often pitches can be so flat. Could be more friendly for spinners and batters, totally. But you can see why the two Ws were so dominant, Wazim and Waqar, to get it to go in the air. The great teacher in Imran Khan. But you have to be able to do that. And by having a good wrist, getting in a good position to do that, I would say is paramount for young aspiring quicks.
When you're talking about slower balls, Yorkers, it's easier said than done. But how do you go about things from your preparation stage during training phase right through to game day?
Two things come to mind. I think it's clarity. So just be clear about what you want to do, and then obviously practice in terms of like repetitions. You have to practice those skills because it's not, I wouldn't say that it's not easy because it obviously comes more naturally to certain players more so than others, but it's something you have to practice. The same as batters trying to develop a new shot, you have to keep practicing it. So with that, you obviously need to have a game plan as well. But I think having clarity as to like what, and knowing strengths and weaknesses. So if my strength is a certain ball, I need to know that like if I go to that ball, I'm going to execute it at a really high percentage. And this ball over here is probably at a much lower percentage. So don't neglect your strength because your strength has to be like really good. And then you can work on your weakness and get it better. Because I've seen a lot of guys, oh no, this is my strength, right? So I'm okay with this. They work on this weakness a lot, and then the strength kind of goes down there, and then your weakness. So then you have two average skills. So you like if you watch the best guys in the world, they're very simple actually, and they don't have all these different variations that people really think about. I mean, like if I look at Dwayne Bravo, who's probably been one of the best T20 players for a very long time. Simple. He can bowl a good Yorker, he can bowl a good bumper, and he's got a good slower ball, and he bowls decent length as well. So if you think about cricket, the most simple things are the most effective things. And even your like batters as well. Like you look at, there are some guys who are a bit different. And I mean, those will be like maybe 4 or 5 guys. But if you look at the really good players, they just do good things often and kind of more basic cricket shots, you know what I mean? And it's just about them being clear. And I reckon if you speak to all of those players, and from players that I've spoken to around the leagues and stuff, they it kind of all comes back to having a game plan and just being clear.
When you're actually training in the nets, do you try and put something on it, as in just try and replicate that pressure situation?
So when I was younger, you obviously have like little games in the nets and stuff. So that was quite big, like when I was a lot younger. But as I kind of get a bit older now, I kind of try and figure out what I need to do. So I'm practicing more along the lines of where I would bowl in the game. So say I'll have to bowl in the first 6 overs, say in like T20 cricket, if I'm bowling in the first 6 overs, right? This is what I need to do when I'm bowling to a player that kind of plays like this. Then, come back again, either maybe bowl in the middle overs or at the death, right? This is what I'm going to do. These are my strengths. These are my fields I'm going to have. And then tell the batter, right? These are my fields. I don't really so much now like place an emphasis on like, right, okay, I'm going to bowl 12 balls at you. Got X number of runs, because in a net it's difficult, because guys hit, it sounds nice, but it might be out caught, or they hit in a certain spot, you think like, oh no, that's straight to a fielder, but it might beat the fielder. So yeah, that to a certain extent, but I think it's more about like me focusing on what I'm going to do during games and stuff. And I think preparing that way, again, becoming more specific and being clear as to how I want to go about training as well.
For example, say a club cricketer that doesn't have any video footage, just playing against someone that they've never even bowled to before. Any advice that you give for those in the amateur game in terms of setting up a batsman? What kind of advice, what things they should they be doing at the top of their mark as they go through their spell?
I think it's a funny thing. I spoke to one of our bowlers 2 weeks ago about the same thing. He overanalyzes the players he plays against so much, and by the time he gets into the game, he's made up his mind what he wants to do already. And when he can't do it, he's so negative and about what he's done, because he didn't do what he saw and envisioned doing, that he starts bowling worse. So I think it plays a big part in the game these days. But I think sometimes it's really good to go into the game fresh and seeing with your own eyes what to do against a batter. And I think sometimes when you bowl, in international cricket, it takes guys, yes, there's a lot of video analysis, but guys also change their game plan. You're going to do something different. International bowlers will take 2 to 3 balls to sum up a batter. First-class cricketers will take 9 balls, and then clubbies and guys younger will take a lot longer. But I think the big key is sometimes you get the feel as a bowler when you're bowling to the person. But I think the biggest thing of summing up a batter happens when you're fielding. Sometimes guys go to fine leg and they drift and they don't really focus and they get their breath back. That's when they got to see which way the guy's feet movements are. Are they going back first? Are they going forward first? The guy at point can give you advice, how deep is in his crease. So using the feelers to help you, these feet movements, looking when you're fielding, what the guys are doing, will give you a slight edge. When you bowl, of course, if you're skilled enough as a bowler, you would know, okay, this guy is a strong front foot player. I need to be maybe short over length. And then playing around, okay, let's see, does he move across? No, move across. So that's a good thing. Keep him on the leg side and then try and go one away, try and get nicking or bowl him. So it's just, is your skill good enough? But also just making sure you keep on watching, observing at all times to really know what the batter is doing. And I think that's a skill that you, if the higher you go up, that you get better with and you do it quicker.
How much time were you spending going around the wicket, over the wicket, specific balls, swinging the ball away, bringing it back in? Were you doing those specific drilling? And again, any advice you can give for those watching as well?
I think that's a really important thing to practice. I think a lot of times guys will go to nets and they just want to stay bowling over the wicket and make them feel comfortable. I think practices are there to make you feel uncomfortable and try different things. So the moment you go into game and those scenarios could come up, you're ready for it. So I think, yes, you have to practice those things. I did a lot because we were lucky at Graham Smith that was quite left-hander, I quite enjoyed practicing to him because he was pretty skillful against guys coming around the wicket to him. So I bowled around the wicket, trying to take it away from him. Then I would then not forget about the option coming over. So for me, is these days guys say, listen, we're bowling around the wicket to guys, and they stick to the plan, just bowling to left-handers around the wicket, and guys normally get used to it. So I think you've got to practice being adaptable, bowling over and around the wicket, and then also try and play around with different deliveries. It's your duty and responsibility as a bowler to be skilled enough and equipped enough to try different things with being control, if that makes sense. So when you're going around the wicket, try and play with the different angles at the crease, because the different angle of the crease, okay, it's already a different angle. That already like a variation without even trying. Then the different balls you can play around with. Once again, it all depends on the conditions. I say a lot of times conditions dictate what you have to do and how you want to go about it. So if the ball is maybe not swinging as much, it might be then play around with the angle of the seam in your hand. It might go easier seaming away. Then that could be your delivery for the day, and you might forget about the one that comes back. Maybe just if you can keep it cross seam and keep it going straight, that's also an option to try. But I think it's just a thing you have to play around with at practices, so you know what you can do and what you can't do. So by the time you go into the game, you've tried these options, and it's not strange to you.
There's a lot of talk now about fast bowlers and having a braced front leg, shoulder hip separation. Were you thinking about all that back in the day?
I think it's important. It all depends. So a lot of times people go on the brace leg if the guy's got a real good action. But I think a lot of times coaches and people in general want to clone bowlers and want to make them look like the perfect specimen. And unfortunately, it's in these days not possible anymore. I think we lose the uniqueness of certain bowlers, and that brings the excitement like a boomerang. It's different and unique. And I think you have to be adaptable to the bowlers you're working with, or as a bowler, what's your strengths and weaknesses, know what you need to be doing in your action to make it really efficient. Of course, you got to make it work efficient and smartly, so it'll cut down on injuries, and also make sure you're consistent on your length and accuracy, because at the end of the day, you might be unique, but you can't pitch the ball where you need to. You have to find the right balance of those things. So I think it's important. Yes, it plays a part, knowing all those smart things, if I can say. But I think it's important to know what works for you, know what makes your action work well, and make it consistent and effective enough for injuries and, of course, performances.
In terms of practicing bouncers, if you've got a youngster currently, there's a lot said about bowling line and length and putting a cloth down there. And it just seems a bit more straightforward to kind of practice that in the nets. But how would you advise a youngster in terms of bowling an effective bouncer, and how would they practice that in a net situation, for example?
I think the bouncer, sometimes people think it's just for intimidation. Yes, it plays a part, but also if you're a real good length bowler, you move the ball away from a good length quite consistently. If you have a very effective bouncer, it stops the guy's feet. Now it's got two things to think about. And then if you can hit your consistent length quite well, then it actually brings in a dismissal, or a bigger chance for dismissal, because his feet stuck. So I think it's a very effective ball in general. I think probably the best way for you to train it is to do it at nets. Put your normal little marker or whatever you do at nets where you want to bowl. But I think then put another marker on where you think the best bouncer would be coming through head height. It is also important to make sure you sum up the conditions, which length you have to bowl to make it quite accurate, because you don't want to spend that much energy on bowling a bouncer if it's not directed in the right way and used in the right way. So it's making sure that you're just getting it quite accurate, where you can use what I've used with our guys at Essex. I've got almost like a big, tall broom, put it in a beacon or like a cone, if that's like a street cone, and then put a face of a batter on there, for argument's sake, whoever our bowlers didn't like, and they will have to bowl 1 or 2 bounces in a spell of 5 overs to that beacon to try and see if they can hit that face, just to make sure it's quite accurate and effective instead of wasting energy. I think that's probably the way of using it and making sure it's used wisely. So you can be creative on putting beacons up, or you can get like anything really. But I think it's just making sure it gets used effectively, not using energy at the wrong way.
Cricket Life Stories with me, Neel Khagram. Today we're joined by Matt Mason. Matt, how's it going in Australia currently?
Yep, all going well, thank you. As we were just talking about, in the middle of a BBL campaign that's very busy, long time on the road for our Perth Scorchers team, but things are going pretty well. We're sitting on top of the table. Won, I think, 7 wins from 8 games. So, yeah, things are looking okay so far.
Yeah, looking good so far. So, Matt, you're going to give us some tips and advice on the art of bowling, some nuggets which can potentially help young players. Before we get into the subject, just run through your career quickly. Obviously, on the playing side, Western Australia and Worcester in the UK before moving into the coaching world. Run us through it.
Yeah, it's a story that sort of takes me both sides of the world. Obviously, grew up in Perth and was lucky enough to play under 19 level for Western Australia and then break into the Shield squad for a couple of years. Opportunities, to be honest, were a little bit limited. We were very strong in bowling. I think I only played a handful of games over a couple of seasons, and sadly, for me, some interstate bowlers came across the pond to Perth, and I got squeezed out. And thought very quickly that my cricket journey might have come to an abrupt end, but thankfully, Tom Moody, who had been my captain for Western Australia, became the director of cricket at Worcester, and I was over there playing some club cricket, and he reached out to me and said, due to your Irish and English ancestry, you could potentially play first-class cricket again in this country, which, funnily enough, I turned him down the first time. I thought, no, I grew up wanting to play for Australia, of course, and it didn't happen, so I was prepared to walk away. But he convinced me that we're very lucky to do what we do. So second time round, I agreed. And then, as you know, I had 17 fantastic years at Worcestershire County Cricket Club, and then 2 years at Leicestershire in my coaching role before moving back here to Perth a couple of seasons ago. This is my 3rd season coaching the Perth Scorchers in Western Australia. So it's funny to have started here and find myself back here, but obviously I have very, very fond memories of first playing and, of course, coaching in England, which I started back in about 2008. So I've been doing it for a while now.
Any youngster potentially watching this, would you say there are key attributes to a bowling action which lead to both pace and accuracy?
Yeah, I don't think they're exclusive of each other. I strongly believe that when you're coaching a young fast bowler to get into a position to bowl quickly, you're often putting them in a better position to stay safe and to also be more accurate. So you tend to find that when you're coaching young cricketers, you don't sort of necessarily coach those things as separate disciplines. You sort of look at the whole picture and you work out pretty quickly that by putting a youngster into a really good position to be safe, number one, you generally get a better outcome in terms of speed and also accuracy. So I think that's an important thing to remember for any young player, but also any young coach, that don't treat them necessarily as separate. They tend to sort of work hand in hand, is my experience.
How deep do you look at the biomechanics of a bowling action? So a lot of attention I've seen, several coaches also advocate a lot about, that brace front leg, shoulder hip separation. How much does that come into your philosophies when you're coaching a player?
Yeah, I think at the level I work at, obviously we have huge amounts of technology there to support us as well. So I'm able to dive a little bit deeper. But I do say this to a lot of coaches now. There's a lot of stuff and information you can get just from taking your iPhone out at cricket training and videoing a young fast bowler. From looking from the side on position, we're looking for the attributes for speed. When we get behind the bowler, we're looking for the attributes for health. And as I said before, you can't generally have one without the other, because it's a recipe for disaster having these young fast bowlers trying to bowl fast but from an unsafe position. And I guess for me as a coach, I've invested very heavily in my own education around biomechanics. But I'm also very lucky. I reach out a lot to people that are experts in their field. You'd be amazed how many people out there are willing to help. There's a fabulous young doctor called Felton, who's a biomechanist who's done some work with the ECB, who was instrumental in helping my work with Cameron Green over the last couple of years. As you know, 4 stress fractures in 4 years, and we've had to do a lot of work to get him now into playing Test cricket on this Ashes series. And I certainly wouldn't be able to do that work without his input. So I don't profess to have all the answers from a biomechanical sense, but there are some basic fundamentals that all coaches definitely need when it comes to coaching speed, but keeping our bowlers safe.
You mentioned safety several times there. Can you actually bowl fast without having certain attributes such as a braced front leg? And it's say the youngsters watching this who doesn't have the resources, what advice would you give them? Because they're hearing a lot of stuff being said that you need certain elements to bowl fast, but again, to do it safely, when they go to like on a Saturday, if they're a clubby, for example, no technology, what would you say to a young player?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think what tends to happen is the first thing you often see with our young quicks in particular, there's this thought that, oh, I need to bowl really, really fast. So in that case, I'm going to run in really, really fast. And what you often find that does, it actually has the opposite effect. Yes, the fastest bowlers tend to have the fastest run-ups, but there is a tipping point where you can't control your body anymore, particularly when you're very young. So if you can't stay balanced, which is a key fundamental for me when looking at any bowler, are they in a balanced position? Then what you tend to do is recruit different muscles, different positions to try and generate that speed. And often it leads to injury. Now, for me, the number one most important thing we should do with our young fast bowlers is make their actions healthy. And by doing that, like I said before, we often actually encourage speed anyway. So there's no point asking a young fast bowler to bowl fast from an unsafe action. Do you need a braced front leg? Not. You don't need one, because there are plenty of fast bowlers out there who don't have that. Some do, but I can think of the likes of Mitchell Stark, Mitchell Johnson, Dale Steyn. You know, there's plenty of guys out there that don't brace that front leg. Jofra Archer is obviously the exception. He does. Many other bowlers do. But there are many other things that also contribute to ball speed, not just a braced front leg. So I would say to most young bowlers, be happy in the skin that you're in. And to any young coach, just make sure that whatever they're trying to do, they're trying to stay as balanced as possible. Because if they do that, they've got the best chance of directing their energy at the target and probably reaching their potential ball speed.
As well as pace, accuracy is fundamental as well. Again, for a player, a young player who's perhaps struggling to must get that ball in those good areas, hitting that top of off, what advice would you give them? Any drills that you would advocate?
Yeah, I think what we have to, this is where we get into a lot of trouble in our sport, I believe. So I mentioned Cameron Green earlier. He came into the professional game at 17 years old with an action that essentially hurt him. So obviously the years before that, he wasn't getting perhaps the coaching or a few other things that he needed to get him into a good position that essentially meant as his workload increased, he would stay safe. And we often challenge our young bowlers to have these outcomes of accuracy and, you know, let's try and hit a Yorker today or hit the top of off stump or whatever it might be, without actually taking any notice of the position that we're actually asking them to do that from. So it's really, really important, I think, that more youngsters are made aware that the outcome will come after we put you into a good position. Because what often happens, they might do the drills that we're talking about to hit off stump, they might do the drills to hit their Yorker. And over a period of time, they could be doing this from a poor position, having success. And of course, when the time comes, that makes it even harder to change because we're doing well. Why should I change? And very, very quickly, they realise that the bowling action they've adopted to achieve the skill has hurt them. And as we know, with particularly these poor back injuries, it's a year out the game, possibly 2 when you have to remodel them. And you'd be amazed how many young cricketers fall out of love with our sport when they have 2 years of being told you can't play. So what would my tip be for youngsters in terms of their development? Seek out a really good coach who can help them get into safe positions to then achieve their skill. So position first, skill after would be my advice.
with the different formats of the of the game, Yorkers, slower balls. Again, a lot's been said. You just look at the players at the highest level. You hear commentators, you know, they advocate that element of the art of bowling. What tip would you give in terms of a youngster perhaps listening to that, wanting to practice slow balls, Yorkers, etc.? Would you almost separate the two in terms of the good bowling action and just focus, like say, like the end element of a training session on the variations? Would you say they need to nail that stop ball and the rest will come later?
Yeah, I think any good training session, if structured well, will have an element of technical focus, normally at the beginning. And that can be in any sort of drill format. It might be done at a low intensity. But having said that, we also know that it's less likely to transfer if the intensity is too low. So I think you have to visit technique. I can think of many other sports. Think of the professional golfer. How many balls do they hit to hone their swing? I don't think a fast bowler's technique is any different. We have to take them down that path of practicing their technique. It's what allows them to execute their skill. And of course, then we need to have some fun with it. We need to actually go out there and perform our skills. Now, there's a million different ways that you can achieve those things by just having like target bowling, moving targets for Yorkers, you know, different coloured cones for different types of deliveries to mix it up. But I would also say that rather than try and have 12 or 13 different deliveries, become absolutely class at maybe 3 or 4. So that your chance of execution is really, really high, because as we find out at the highest level of the game, you need to be able to execute very consistently to have success. So by all means, practice a straight Yorker, practice a wide Yorker, practice 2 types of slow ball and a really good bouncer. And if you execute those really, really well, you're going to be pretty much on the road to success.
Can you just give us a little insight in terms of the training structure? Obviously, there's loads of games that happen sometimes in a week, but say, for example, there's one game in the week and you've got a 5-day build-up. Can you just run us through how you would work with your bowlers as you approach game day, for example?
Yep, so if it was a junior bowler who generally only play on the weekends, I think the timing of your technical work is really, really important. So we tend to find our sessions earlier in the week where we might have our technical focus, because they're generally the most difficult. Most young players really struggle with this idea of understanding how their body's moving, drilling down into the technical stuff. It can get quite frustrating for them and actually muddle their thinking. So it's really important that we do that early in the week. Then we can park it, and then we can switch our focus into game day preparation, which will probably be more about skill execution and preparation for the type of game that we're going to play. And then what you'll find will happen over time is the player will become more comfortable with the technical stuff, and you might be able to then spread that across your sessions. And then the hope would be over more time that the technical intervention work will slowly start to creep in naturally. We can't rush this process. It takes a lot of repetition and a lot of hard work to make a technical change stick. Again, I've been working with Cameron Green now for 2 years. He's a professional bowler, has all the time in the world, and yet we're still nowhere near the finish line. There's still work to be done. So we can't rush the process, and it must continue on all through the summer, all through your planning of a week. They must do some technical work, must do some skill work, and then hopefully over time the two will merge.
A line that's also banded around is that a sentence that's almost banded around is that a bowler needs to be able to do something with the ball to succeed at the very highest level. Do you believe in that statement as well?
100%. I think, again, I like to sometimes imagine other sports. I think, again, for a professional bowler or any bowler at the highest level or working towards the highest level, if you can imagine yourself as a major league baseball pitcher, you're not going to survive at those highest levels if you can't throw the variations that you need consistently. It just won't happen. So I think it's really, really important that we have complete and utter, if you like, ability to what leaves our fingers. And that's just through practice. So you should be able to present the seam. You should be able to bowl a wobble seam on demand. You should understand what reverse swing is and how to achieve it. And then the subtleties of the game from there, angles on the crease, when to go over, when to come around, and those sorts of things come into play. And that can be done at the youngest age groups as well. Again, so many drills and things that we can do. You know, imparting spin on the ball is so important for swing. You've seen the best at it, Jimmy Anderson, Trent Bolt, Tim Southey. Huge revolutions on the ball so the seam stays up beautifully, and they have total control of what comes out of their hands. We've seen it in the Ashes as well. And that's just through volume and practice. You can't just let the ball go and hope. The game and the batsmen are far too good for that.
When it comes to seam and swing, is there any element of the action that's more important than the other, or is it down to each individual? Is there a lot to do with wrist, a finger, the way they release it, almost the non-bowling arm? Again, what's your insight into that?
Well, I think, again, it's very individual. There are certain things that some bowlers will do on a given day that will allow them to swing the ball versus when they can't. What you often find, and this can be a source of great frustration for many bowlers, is when they're just sort of, say, at 80 or 90% of their match intensity, they seem to swing the ball really well. And then when they get up to top speed, the swing disappears. And 9 times out of 10, the technique has changed slightly to generate that extra speed and has an impact on their wrist position or their ball release. So ball release is still really important. And the last bit to make contact with the ball, of course, is your fingers. So I think, grip is really important. I've seen plenty of bowlers have some very strange grips and still stand the seam up. And it just happens that grip works for that action. So when coaching swing, I always ask the bowlers to start with a very natural, neutral grip. So fingers either side of the seam, thumb underneath. And let's see what your natural action does. And then we can film the ball. Again, you can use your iPhone, get some fluorescent yellow tape on the seam, and you can actually film that seam going down the wicket and begin to understand why the shape is what it is. And then you just work with that. It's very subtle, but very necessary.
When it comes to mindset, a lot of attention I see is given on the batting side of cricket. But bowling, what would you say is the greatest challenge from a mental mindset perspective that a bowler generally faces on a day-to-day basis and again at the highest level? And what advice would you give a young player?
I think for me, we're in a very privileged position as fast bowlers, is that nothing happens until we release the ball. So I feel like the message I give to young bowlers is we're in control. So that's a great place to be. And we get far more opportunities for success than batters do. We bowl one good ball and nick a batter off, their day is done. But we have a lot of opportunities to actually have success. So I guess patience and frustration, I see, are two things that come into young fast bowlers. They always want wickets. They get frustrated, or they get hit for a few runs and the head goes down. It's understand that, don't think of it as a 6-ball over. Think of it as one ball at a time. Every single ball you bowl is an opportunity for success. And I think if you think of the game that way, whether it's T20, 50 over, or Test match cricket, or whatever it might be, that's a lot of opportunities to be successful. I remember we were very lucky enough at Worcester to have Syed Ajmal play a couple of seasons with us. And we had a bad couple of games. And I remember he said something really important to our group, which stuck with me. He said, cricket is 70% cry. And I know what he means by that. We actually fail more times than we succeed, and that's okay. So it's just telling youngsters to be patient, and especially bowlers, what are you worried about? You bowl one bad ball, it doesn't matter. You got plenty more balls to get it right. So just framing things a little bit differently, I think, is my main thing to them.
And that control of that nerve element, bowling that last over, having to defend a certain number of runs. Does the nerve control come through confidence from practice?
Absolutely. I think if you've got trust in your ability, which is what we were talking about earlier, if you try and practice too many different things and you're not quite good at any of them, you're just okay, then your chances of being in control in those clutch situations is less. Whereas if you've got total control of your ability to execute a Yorker or whatever it might be that you need, then you can run in with total confidence. And understand as well that when you're bowling that final over, again, it's an opportunity to be a hero. Whereas actually the odds are probably in the batter's favour. So if it doesn't come off, well, no one probably expected it anyway, but you could be a hero. So just like you said, practice gives you confidence because you've done it before. And I'm a massive believer in routines as well, pre-game, pre-delivery routines. They give you some protection. They stop the outside noise coming in. and it's yours. No one can touch it. And if you get into those lovely routines, then generally pressure stays away. So again, another tip for youngsters: start to develop a lovely pre-game, pre-delivery routine. Batters do it. Bowlers need to do the same.
Matt, it's been a fascinating chat. Just to end on, what is your best piece of tip and advice for a youngster coming through the ranks?
I think absolutely bowl with a smile on your face, because it's hard work, it's physically demanding, mentally demanding, as we talked about. But if you smile and enjoy the experience of being that big fast bowler that everybody's sort of intimidated by and scared of, that gives you great confidence to go out there and practice your skills. And and don't worry, you will fail, but failing's good. We learn, and just keep going at it, keep going. And, eventually you'll get yourself in a good position. You'll get the results coming your way, and you'll, hopefully go on and be pretty successful, as long as you just keep trying and trying again.
Matt, perfect. Thank you very much again for your time today. Really appreciate it, and all the best for the weeks ahead. So thank you.
Thank you. Cheers.
So Neel Khagram, Cricket Love Stories, Matt Mason, thank you. Cricket Love Stories with me, Neel Khagram. Today we're joined by Liam Plunkett. Liam, how's it all going?
I'm good, mate. Nice to be able to have a chat with you, and obviously get into some good cricket skills and some things that I might have done back in the day, and hopefully what helped me can help other people.
So yeah, I'm very grateful for your time. This chat's all going to be about fast bowling, some of your tips that you've done in terms of the training side of things, how you've gone about things from a mental perspective. But before we dive into the chat, you're out in America at the moment. Just for those that may not know, let us know what you're doing out there currently.
Yeah, very excited to get an opportunity to be involved with Major League Cricket. That competition starts, I think, next year, 2020. We're now 23. I think there's going to be something that's going to kick off this year, like an opening ceremony. That's just being penciled in, so that's exciting. But in the meantime, I'm working with the academy, Philadelphia Major League Academy, and getting my teeth stuck into that, helping restructure that, make it become a more professional outfit. They've got a great structure in place now. They've got a couple of guys who opened up a facility 10 years ago for the love and the passion of cricket. So a lot of people come along there and practice and use that facility. So it's hopefully we build on that. And as I said, linking in with the Major League is very exciting. We've seen what happened with the soccer. So hopefully down the line we can get that explosion and cricket become a mainline sport in America.
No, it's very exciting indeed. But let's just dive into some of the chat. When it comes to, does it all start at preparation for yourself as a fast bowler? And can you give us a little insight how you have and what you are doing currently in terms of, from a physical perspective, and how you prepare yourself from a mental perspective away from the actual match day field?
For me, pretty much like a lot of people, when I feel good, I often act good. So it's normally if I feel like I'm doing all the right stuff outside, away from the pitch, over that white line, if I'm looking after myself and doing my training, eating clean, that sort of gives me the clarity to feel like I can do well in a game situation. In terms of when I'm around high performance and when I'm playing for the national team a few years ago, 2 years back, that was the case, is putting my hard work in and make sure you didn't leave anything out. So when you did turn up and you played on the biggest stage, you ticked all them boxes off. And say, for instance, you did fail, you realize that someone could have played well. It wasn't your day, but you've done everything you can to give yourself the best chance.
When you were coming through the ranks as a youngster, did you have coaches who tried to change your action in any way? If a youngster's perhaps watching this and they're kind of experiencing that similar scenario, what advice would you give them?
It's quite difficult, isn't it? For me, you want to be safe first as a kid. You want the action to be safe, and if he's safe and he's sort of successful, he's bowling straight and he's bowling nicely, and you see him advancing, I wouldn't change it too much. It's when it's not safe and you feel like he could damage his or her, they could damage themselves. I've been through some experiences when I was in my teens. Probably not going to name names. It's probably not the best thing to be doing, but I went through a thing where people were trying to get everyone to bowl like a certain person, and it wasn't meant to be. For me, I've got long limbs, and I sort of in my back of my mind, I didn't look like this. I used to think in my mind about like Curtly Ambrose or Courtney Walsh with the big limbs, but as I said, I probably didn't look like that. But people are trying to change that from a high load to a low load, and that just didn't work for me. I lost my pace and I lost my bounce. And then later on down the line, I reverted back to what was natural to me. But that was a struggle, going from my natural action to changing it to shorten up my levers. People obviously shorten up your levers is quite hard to demonstrate, but going from a high position and also then from this position, referring to my arm as the lever is a difficult thing to do. And then trying to revert back to your typical action, it took a long time for me. It took some good coaches, some patient coaches who put in a lot of one-on-one time with me to help get back to where I needed to be. So yeah, I've been through some experiences, and I'm very wary, especially as a coach now myself and looking after kids, is not to jump quickly and make them change because it doesn't look natural. As long as it's safe and they're performing, that's the key for me.
You look deeply into the biomechanics of the action. A lot said when you're talking about fast bowling, having a braced front leg, shoulder hip separation.
I think if you look through professional cricketers, everyone's got a different action. And for me, it's safe. In terms of the biomechanics, is realistically what helps a bowler bowl fast is what you mentioned. Obviously, that might be the best way to go about it, but not everyone can be doing that. You can try and get people to a certain point, but some people just can't get to that point and they're very successful, not ticking all them boxes.
And when it comes from a mindset perspective, can you run us through how you differentiated between the red ball and white ball game in terms of your approach?
Yeah, absolutely. I think towards the back end, I actually struggled a little bit with that. I went through periods in my career back home in the UK where I played a lot of red ball cricket. I wouldn't play so much white ball cricket, and then vice versa. But it is a mindset thing. But for me, I did swing the red ball a lot. So if I've been playing with a white ball, I normally try to run it in top of off and hopefully hold its line. I bowled a lot of cross seam, a lot of wobble seam, and didn't try and take it away. So when it came to the red ball, my action allowed the ball to swing. And you can get lazy with white ball, and you can sort of get used to falling away and pushing the ball in because you don't want it really too much width in, well, any form of cricket, but in white ball cricket, the ball gets cut, goes to the boundary very quickly. So I found it hard coming back to red ball, and I bowled quite a lot of width, a lot of easy leave balls, not threatening the batters or threatening the stumps. But it is a mind thing. I think with a red ball, you have to be very, so your technique's more specific. You'll get found out if you've been playing white ball cricket and then you're lazy on the basics and you come back and try and play red ball cricket. That's me personally. I did find it hard, and I had to put a lot more hard work in terms of my action, holding my action, making sure my alignment was right. And to be fair, I did struggle with that towards the back end of my career.
When it comes to variations in white ball cricket, everyone does talk about having the Yorker, the slower ball, etc. How much practice did you put into it? How much emphasis would you say, is it important to have that, or was the key just to have one or two keys that you can nail every time and then the rest almost follows? What tips would you give a youngster perhaps struggling in terms of the variation aspects of white ball cricket?
Yeah, you want to have your bread and butter. You want to be able to hit your good length, which obviously is the length that you want the batsman to play at, the length what the batsman's unsure to go forward or back. You need to have that day in, day out. And so when you do try to bowl a slow ball, it doesn't quite work. You can go back to that delivery of being consistent at your length. But I feel it's, with the modern game, as many slow balls possible is the best way to go about it, but get good at each one. And it could start by just learning as a kid to bowl an off cutter, just putting your fingers down it and pretty much like a fast off spinner. So ideally for me, it's, can you have a ball that goes away from the left-hander? Can you have a ball that goes away from the right-hander? Then something that comes out the front or the back. So if you have three sort of slow balls, that's ideal. A lot of guys will have a back of the hand and a knuckle ball, off cutter, leg cutter. The more tools in your toolbox is obviously going to give you more skills and give you more chance of getting wickets. But also, it's, if you have too many tools, you might overuse them. So that's also another thing. For me, I was very fortunate playing in a very strong England team. And when I bowled was a lot in the middle. So the variations I used was more moving the seam around in terms of a wobble seam, as I mentioned, and a cross seam and an off cutter. Something out the front of the hand was a tiny bit variation, but I felt it worked best for me when the paces didn't drop too much. If I could go from in my prime at 88 and 90, then the next one was maybe an 84, and you get a tiny bit of variation where you get someone driving at a ball that's not there to be driven, and you get catches at mid on, mid off. That's how I felt benefited me.
When you're approaching bowling an over in one-day cricket, did you almost have a plan in terms of, say, the first two balls? If it was a dot ball, then you would almost throw in, say, a Yorker ball or a bouncer. How did you structure the 6 balls? And again, any tips you can give a young player on that?
Depends the situation of the game. Also depends what the batter was doing. If the batter was looking to attack, did the batter just come in? Was he looking to survive and get himself in? But for me, I was trying, a lot of the times I was trying to hit my length as hard as possible, making the batsman play, but be undecisive, making them do something different. If they played a good shot from a good delivery, then I'm happy with that. Can they do it again and again? I would always look to bowl an aggressive bouncer to make the batsman feel uncomfortable. I'm not saying that he didn't play it and hit me for 4, hit me for 6, but it's in the back of their mind. They know that you've got a good bouncer. So yeah, for me, it was, let me hit my length as hard as I can. Let me see what the batsman's going to do. Sometimes I would throw in a different ball. It just depends how I was feeling. But as long as I practice all these balls previously and I knew I can pull them out when I wanted to bowl them, I was happy with that. It's not like I'm just going to practice a back of the hand ball that I'm not going to come into a game and bowl a back of the hand delivery. I'm not going to pick that out of thin air if I've not practiced it. So everything was sort of in calculation with what's going on in the game. How do I think I can get this guy out? Is it time that we need to attack and get a wicket? Or am I happy sitting in and getting some dot balls and getting some singles and putting the pressure on the batters?
Then if a young bowler perhaps does have the tools to bowl a slower ball, but consistency is a problem in terms of they can almost nail it 1 every 10 balls. What drills were you doing so that your skill levels were so high and then you were able to execute it at the crunch moments?
I think it's just practice, repetition. It's putting yourself under pressure in practice. Can they do that? Because if they're nailing it once in 10, that's obviously the numbers. You need to get that up to 6, 7 out of 10, especially like an off cut or a leg cut. That becomes the normal delivery for people. As a fast bowler, generally someone can roll the fingers across an off cut and land it where they want to land it. So is be able to repeat and repeat and repeat, as you said. It's just maybe looking at yourself and maybe getting someone to video yourself to see. People are visual learners, and sometimes when people are asking them or saying, I think you need to do this, this, and this, it just doesn't register. So maybe give them different options of learning. For me, I love to watch the video clips of me trying to bowl a certain delivery because that sat with me and I could sort of link it into myself then going on to bowl. If someone was speaking to me, I would pick it up a little bit, but it didn't translate as well as watching something.
Now, when it comes to red ball cricket, do you believe that as a medium fast bowler, you can succeed if you don't move the ball? And then again, perhaps you can almost like show the screen in terms of what you did in terms of your seam position, release point, etc.
I think to be a successful professional bowler, you got to be able to either swing it, seam it, have bounce or accuracy. You need to have one of them things. If you're just a bowler who's running up bowling a little bit of this, a little bit of that, then you're not going to last too long. Just a general for me, if I was playing red ball cricket, it depends when it was in my career in the UK. Early on, I was bowled a lot of just stand up away swinger where I would run up and try and swing it away, maybe try and push in an in swinger. Then later on, even in red ball cricket, when I came back and played for Yorkshire, I went round a wicket and sort of was used as an enforcer. I would bowl a lot of cross seam, and the cross seam worked for me, and that's when it sort of started for me, the whole cross seam revolution, I guess, for me in terms of my career. Was I would run round the wicket, ball fast, ball into the wicket, ball bounces, and obviously with the cross seam, sometimes it hits the seam and bounces, and you get that unpredictable bounce. Sometimes it hits the the shiny side or the rough side, and it skids on. Well, I was very traditional in terms of away swing seam seam position, and also the in-swinger, which if the ball was swinging a lot, I could bowl an in-swinger, but it wasn't like a go-to ball for me. It wasn't something I could just pluck out the air like Jimmy does.
If we just focus now on the topic of coping with, pressure.
Mm-hmm.
You see it banded around that when someone's talking about that topic, a lot of focus is on the batsman, batswoman. But for you as a quick bowler, you played in the biggest game, the World Cup final. How did you cope with the pressure of the occasion and the pressure in terms of executing your skills on the bigger stage?
I think what I mentioned a little bit earlier is making sure in practice that I've done everything I can to make myself clear-minded when I step onto the pitch. A lot of it can come with experience. I'm very fortunate to play for England for over a period of time, and I'd experienced some the back of the Ashes 2005 when the cricket was big in the UK, and I went on a few tours then when obviously Fred and KP and these guys were popular. So it was from early in my career, there was quite a lot of pressure. There was a lot of crowds coming to watch, and then you're playing bigger tournaments, you're playing county cricket with the fans, and you make Lord's finals, and there's more added pressure, so you learn from that. And then we got beat in a World Cup final, so you're used to being in that scenario and that situation with the high stakes. And then I think with the team we played and the captain we had in Morgs, it was just express yourself, enjoy yourself, and everyone was pushing each other at that point, as well as people playing in the IPL. I managed to play in the IPL, and the crowd's there. That's like playing an international tournament. You're playing with the best people in the world against the best people in the world. And you sort of just learn to live in that environment, and you learn to thrive in it. And if you don't, then obviously you get found out and you go back to county cricket, or you don't last in the game too long. You need to learn to sort of love it. When it came to the World Cup final, I felt like I've been through a lot in terms of who I played for and the situations. So I just sort of thought, like, I'm going to go out there and enjoy it. And what's meant to be is meant to be. I'm not a massive believer in certain stuff, but I just thought it was written in the stars that day. So I just thought to myself, I'm going to enjoy it. There was nerves, but it was good nerves. So,
are you big on, say, like visualization? Say the day before a game, would you almost mark out your run, and at the top of your mark, visualize bowling certain deliveries to certain players? Is that something that you implemented as a pro?
Sometimes I did. I think as a cricketer, you go through, for me, I can't speak for anyone else, as a bowler, I went through sort of waves in my, so far up to date in my career, where sometimes I did do the visual thing. Sometimes I'd sing a song in my head before I bowl, just to clear it. I knew what ball I was going to bowl, then I'd sing a song, then run up and bowl. Before a game, often I would speak to the guy who does all the video content, and obviously all the stuff on the overseas batters or like an Aussie team, and I would look at it, get it on my phone, and maybe watch what the dot ball deliveries were and where they might get the singles. I didn't really like to watch them hitting fours or sixes because I didn't want to have that in my head when I was bowling at people. There's so much on TV you can see of players, and you play against all these guys that the content's there to watch. So in my mind, if I was bowling at a left-hander, I know that he struggles on his pads, or he doesn't like the ball, like an off-cut or going away, then that's what I would watch. Whereas his wicket ball, he might sort of fend at one just outside off stump, a good chance of getting caught. He might clip it to mid-wicket. There's a catching option there. So I'd always have this the day before on my phone, having a coffee, looking through videos of how people dot ball, wicket ball, and maybe a single.
And if you reflect back, what would you say has been the most difficult part of fast bowling, and how you generally overcame that problem, that difficulty?
I think in terms of changing my action, to be honest with you, going from obviously the long lever to the short lever to the long lever again, and being consistent. I found it hard over my career to be consistent a lot of that stages. It was only probably the last 5-6 years that I was more consistent. But yeah, I mean, in terms of being a fast bowler, it is demanding in terms of you need to be fit and you need to be strong, like you see the guys on TV now. But I love that part of it. That was part of the job I really loved, and I probably overdid it and maybe picked up some injuries from overtraining. Some of the guys who lasted long know when to train, and it is cricket that you get paid for. You don't get paid for being the best triathlon and triathlete in the team, so you need to realise at that point. So maybe something I could have picked up a lot earlier in my career, and who knows, I could have played a bit more for England.
And Liam, it's been a fascinating chat. England international, World Cup winner, But just to end on, if a young player is watching this, what would be the best tip and advice you'd give them on fast bowling?
First off, enjoy it. Also, it's not always going to go your way, but that's part and parcel of the game. As you mentioned earlier, explore, bowl your slow balls, your off cutters, your back of the hand, your knuckle balls. Don't be afraid to challenge yourself, and yeah, keep as fit as you can, because that's going to pay off in the long run. Generally, the fitter you are, the longer you last in the game. Your engine lasts longer. You can bowl faster and longer for periods in the game. And if you hopefully eventually go and play Test cricket, you can be as good as ball one as you are on the last day and on day 5.
Liam, perfect. Thank you again for your time today. Really appreciate it, and all the best in the American adventure.
Thanks, mate. Great to chat.
So Neel Khagram, Cricket Life Stories, Liam Plunkett. Thank you.
You know, we're going to do a little bit of bowling, so it's important that we get the guys warm. So we're just doing a little bit of band work, light mid-ball work to get the muscles going, and then we're going to go straight into just getting them, just marking their run-ups out and just running through their actions with the ball in their hands. So they get straight into it. When they get straight into it, everything is linked together. Obviously, it's the middle of the cricket season, and we're still indoors. So we're not going to go too hard with the boys, you know, so everything we do today, we're going to do it about 60 to 80%, but looking for the same skill level, which I'll talk you through a bit later. What I want you to do is just mark your run-up out. If you need to pull the nets back, and we're just going to drag through about 50% 6 times. So just that's a part of your warm-up. The benefit of doing this is just to get them a rhythm going, and also they're running with their natural running style. Instead of doing our sprint warm-up and then go and bowl, they're just basically running the same way they bowl, and they get just a bit of rhythm going when they're ready to bowl. So obviously they finished, they're running through now, so they're actually just bowling the ball and just concentrated on hitting the target and hitting the stump 3/4 ways up. If it goes over, great, but if you have a look, we want the ball around that yellow target, so they're visualizing a right-hander is batting and just try and hit that area as consistently as they can. We're gonna try and swing the ball away now to the right-hander. Talk me through your outswinger. Just, yeah.
Well, how I'd hold it?
Yeah.
Is I have my middle finger on the seam.
Yeah.
And my index just on the outside.
Yeah.
And have my index really light on my at the back, and then pinky.
Yeah. Where does your rough side pointed?
Inwards.
Inwards. Okay. All right. Okay. All right. So does it point towards fine leg or towards the slip? The rough side.
Towards the slip.
Towards the slip. Okay. Excellent. So now what we're gonna do, yeah? You see this? We're gonna hold the ball like this. We're not gonna let anything get on any of these sides, okay? And this side here, our shiny side, we're gonna shine it some more. So look, you see my hands not touching it? We're shining it, shine it, shine it, shine it, shining it. Anyhow, some people put it in their shot, okay? And only time is when you get the seam on that, okay? And have a look at that now, whether you're all 3 right-handers, okay? So if you look how shiny that is, and that is, all right? So what we're gonna do, I'm gonna put a target there. I want you to keep working on this ball. And we're gonna try and swing it and just hit this. Obviously it's a big target, but it's just to give them a little bit of vision to see what the ball does, and obviously a bit of target to see if they could nip it or swing it from here and just hit. All right, Corey's bowling with a new ball, and he's a quite tall lad. So sometimes his length may be a little bit different. So he bowled a little bit a back of a length. So the challenge for him, if he could get it a little bit fuller and get some movement. Where did the pitch? Was it full or was it too short, you reckon?
That was too short.
Too short, isn't it? Okay. So again, all right, just what I want you to try, just get your wrist behind it like that. Don't try anything, don't try and turn your wrist anyway, just keep your wrist behind it as long as possible when you present it, and bowl it as full as possible, as close as possible to that yellow thing, and see what it does, all right? Nice, Corey, good. So now, again, we're just going to try and identify who can swing the ball back in. If it doesn't swing in, it doesn't really matter, but I want them to have an understanding how to swing the ball in. So I'll probably ask them a few questions in a minute, and then we're just going to have a go at it. So all I've done here, if you come with me, I'll show you. So I've just bring the stumps just a fraction outside half stump, and the idea now is to try and land it around the stump and hit the target. So that's as simple as that. Yeah, it sounds simple, but yeah, that's what we're going to try and do. So it's just outside half stump, and we're trying to go around it, and this side where the yellow marker is, and try and hit the target. So what do you reckon? Swing? It wants to swing, isn't it? Swing? A little bit. Swing, Warren? When does it swing for you? When you go fuller, isn't it? Okay, so I'm going to tell you what was impressive about that for me. Even though all the deliveries didn't swing 100%, how accurate were we around that area? Very accurate in it. So that was really good. You know, Corey, you hit the target a couple of times. Brandon, you get a couple to go as well. And Warren, as you said, when you get it to go full, you could see it wants to do a little bit. Okay, so well done there, guys. These things is something that you could go away and practice by yourself, and just add it to your training. And it's nothing technical about it. It's about just practice with your wrists. Just go there, go here, see what it does, and just get the feel of how it feels when it does stuff. Okay. Obviously, I'm left-handed, but I'm gonna try wobble it off my right fingers. Okay. So what we're gonna do? So this is your shiny side. So for example, if you want it to wobble in, maybe just try there. And then basically when you bowl it, you want to just drag your fingers down behind it. When it hits, it will just go that way, and it could happen, anything could go. Imagine a surface that it's not swinging, there's nothing happening, and you're just going to try and do something different with the ball. Okay? So a flat one, and most wickets look really flat now in county cricket. There's a lot of runs. So it's really important to kind of have these type of skill, especially in red ball cricket. Okay, so again, whatever works for you. We're just gonna go a little 3/4 seam there. And you could choose whichever way you want to put your shiny side, and just rip your finger down the side and see what happens. All right, just having a go. Show me that. Show me. Good. Okay, just a little bit more there. Show me yours, Brendan. Just a little bit there. Okay. And just rip your finger. So you want it to come out, can I show you, demonstrate left-handed? So you want it to be coming out like that, okay? So, see that there? So you want it, when it hits, it's coming back that way. That's good, Corey. Yes, Brendan, that looks like it wobbles.
Cricket Life Stories with me, Neel Khagram. Today at the Oval, joined by Spencer Johnson. Spencer, how's it all going in the UK and the hundreds?
Yep, loving it so far in the 100. Spent a bit of time here last year, and I'm excited to be back.
Great venue for it today as well at the Oval. Spencer, you're just going to give a few tips about fast bowling. And say if a youngster or an amateur player came up to you and just asked about the basics, does it all start from the run-up, in your opinion?
Yeah, obviously the Oval, what a place to play. I think it's quite suited to my bowling. So for me, keeping things as simple as possible. In terms of run-up, for me, I like to be more in control. And you look at Shellbackton and Bretley, they're charging in, where I'm sort of a bit more trying to get rhythm, more than speed. So I feel like the faster I bowl generally is if I've got my rhythm and not overstriding or not trying to run too fast.
What about positioning at the crease? Saying white ball cricket, do you look to vary it in terms of going closer to the stumps, wider, or is it pretty consistent? How do you do things?
Yeah, I don't know, as I said before, I keep things as simple as possible. Lucky enough with the 100 balls this year that they do swing a bit, and playing here as well, I feel like the bowlers have had the best of the conditions, so not overthinking it. there's a few little things I think you pick up subconsciously if you see a batter that's potentially lining you up, and you can maybe change your angle, come a bit wider, or you can, slight change of pace. I don't have a big variation. For me, being a left armer, I feel like that's a variation in itself. There's not a whole lot of left armers. So I'm just trying to keep it as simple as possible and bowl to your field.
What about, obviously left armer, predominantly bowl left arm over. When do you actually decide to go around the wicket?
Yeah, for me, plan A is over the wicket, hit that 6 to 7 metre length, top of the stumps. I think there's a couple of reasons why I might change. If I'm not feeling my rhythm, I might need a change of angle, or if a batter is potentially on top. So, and also matchups. If we do a lot of research here, and if the matchup is coming around the wicket, hitting the stumps to certain batters, then that also comes into play. So, there's a few things, but generally for me, plan A, over the wicket, 6 to 7 metre length, and bash away.
And then what about swing bowling? Does it come from the arm position? Is it grip? Obviously, how do you do things again?
I think it's a bit of everything. Obviously, as I said before, the 100 balls have been kind to us this year and last year as well. So getting yourself in nice positions. I like to, lock in and snap that front leg, brace the front leg. So for me, just trusting that the ball will swing. And if
do you tilt the seam in any way, or?
Yeah, you can. There's a few variations you can do, but generally for me, I hold it quite deep. Just a nice, comfortable grip, not too tight, not too loose. Angle it, sort of running in at if I'm bowling to right hand batter, running at the wicket keeper's probably right shoe, and then just making sure I'm following through there. And
What about slower balls? What bag of tricks do you have?
Slower balls
that you can share.
I think for me, I feel quite young to the game. I haven't played a whole lot. I've only really been playing tournaments for the last year and a half, so for my game personally, always trying to learn and grow as a player, adapt to conditions, and you're generally going to see the same players at every tournament you play in. So you're playing against the best, and you've got to be able to adapt and grow as a player. So for me, coming up with a few things is important, because you can't just run in and hit the top of the stumps. So I'm working on an out the back slow ball, which I used to have a bit younger and sort of lost it. But now that's coming back. So out the back slow ball, you see guys like Nathan Ellis, DJ Bravo's, he's got an amazing one. And then off cutter to the right hander, sort of going away. It's not a big dipper, but just a slight change of pace. And then the leg cutter to the left hander, spinning away. So I think they're my three, but as I said before, my left arm being a variation, a bit of natural variation off the wicket. You can use your bouncer or your yorkers. They're also variations. So
how do you go about practicing all of those variations?
Yeah, in tournament it can be tough because you play so many games back to back. I'm not bowling today before the game, but if it wasn't as a busy schedule, I'd normally have a light bowl before the game, and if I'm bowling 6 overs, it would be 2 overs with a new ball, 2 overs through the middle with an older ball, and then some death stuff, which will be yorkers and slower balls. So keeping it very simple.
You mentioned brace front leg in terms of bowling quick. Is that the key if someone wants to clock 90?
Well, I think for me it is. It's not for everyone. I think Gus braces his front leg and he bowls 95. So
is it hard to get a brace front leg? Obviously.
Well, I think
it's a lot of drilling.
Yeah, I feel quite lucky with what I've been blessed with and born with, being left armer and tall. I feel like that's half the battle, especially with Australia. Coming from Australia, we love big, tall, fast bowlers. So, I think brace is important, but it's not everything.
And in terms of the mental side of things, as a fast bowler, it's all about just keep running in, skipper throwing you the ball, change the game?
Yeah, you've got to want the ball. T20 cricket, you can have great games and you can have not so great games, and it's just things can go your way, and then it can be not your day. So for me, not getting too hard on yourself if you have a bad game, and then if you have a good game, just not getting too high as well, and trying to stay as level as possible, because you can bowl the same and things might not go your way. So for me, just trying to stay level and knowing that the good will come with the bad as well.
And then when it's just about, you turn up on a day, is it all about just kind of like executing your process as opposed to just any other thing?
Yeah, for me, I feel like my role it's unique to me. Especially in the 100, with bowling, you can bowl 10 balls in a row. So I'm going into most games wanting to bowl the first 10, and it sort of saves an over for a TC or a junior, where they potentially might be more suited, or their role is for the team is better at the death, where they can defend, where I can be attacking up front. There's lots of research and data to look at, but for me, my plan A is I'm going to stick with that for as long as I can, and if someone's hitting you off your best ball, then make them do it again.
And finally, if a young player came to you for your best piece of advice, what would you tell them?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think for me, you're never going as bad as you think, and you're never going as good as you think. So that's me. That's how you stay level.
Perfect, Spencer. Good luck for the rest of the tournament.
Thank you. Cheers.